In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war.
The Imperium of Man spans 1,000,000 worlds, its armies number in the billions, and its faith can reshape reality itself. For 10,000 years, it has endured every conceivable horror: demonic incursions, xenos invasions, heretical uprisings, and the slow entropic decay of its own magnificence. Its servants have witnessed miracles and abominations, fought gods and monsters, died in their trillions to hold back the dark. But on the afternoon that 7 figures fell burning through the atmosphere of Armageddon Secundus, the Imperium encountered something it had never faced before: heroes. The dimensional rift tore reality like parchment. Darkseid's boom tube technology, already unstable from the Justice League's assault on Apocalypse, had intersected with something vast and terrible, a thin place where the warp pressed close to real space. The collision was catastrophic. The tunnel between dimensions shredded, scattering the 7 across light years of Imperial space. Each one pulled into a different gravity well, a different world, a different nightmare. Superman was the first to recover consciousness. His Kryptonian physiology had absorbed the worst of the dimensional trauma, his cells screaming as unfamiliar radiation burned through him. He fell through clouds that tasted of industrial waste and sacred incense, past orbital defense platforms that swiveled with predatory interest, toward a hive city that sprawled across the planet's surface like a cancerous growth. He arrested his fall 300 meters above the ground, hovering over a plaza packed with humanity. Millions of them, more people than he'd ever seen in one place, all dressed in identical grey workers' garb, all moving with the synchronized precision of insects. The architecture was brutalist and gothic, impossible angles and flying buttresses supporting structures that violated every principle of engineering he understood. Gargoyles leered from every surface, holy script covered every wall, and from 1,000 loudspeakers, a voice bellowed in a language he'd never heard but somehow understood. Blessed is the mind too small for doubt. Blessed are the ignorant. The Emperor protects. Superman descended slowly, hands raised in the universal gesture of peace. The crowd noticed him. The synchronized movement stopped. 1,000,000 faces turned upward, and then, as one, they fell to their knees. "No," Superman said, landing gently among them. "Please, don't. I'm not an angel," someone screamed. "The Emperor sends his angels." The crowd surged forward, not in aggression, but in desperate worship. Hands reached for him, fingers grasping at his cape, his boots, trying to touch something holy. Superman stepped back, appalled, and the crowd wailed as though he'd struck them. "Citizens of the Imperium." A new voice, amplified and cold. "Step away from the unidentified entity. This is Inquisitor Cornelius Fine of the Ordo Hereticus. You will disperse immediately or face summary execution for unsanctioned worship." The crowd scattered like roaches, disappearing into the hive city's 1,000 crevices with practiced terror. Superman turned to face the speaker. The Inquisitor stood on an elevated platform, flanked by soldiers in black carapace armor carrying weapons that looked like chainsaws grafted onto assault rifles. Behind them, a walker the size of a 2-story building idled, its weapon systems tracking Superman with mechanical precision. The Inquisitor himself was pale, augmented, with a bionic eye that whirred and clicked as it focused. "Identify yourself," Vane commanded. "By whose authority do you manifest upon an Imperial world?" Superman floated upward slightly, keeping his voice calm and diplomatic. "My name is Kal-El. I'm not from your world. I'm not even from your reality. I think there was an accident. I need to contact my team, and then we can explain." "He admits to transdimensional manifestation," Vani said to his soldiers. "Probable warp entity, probable daemon. Mark him for immediate purification." The soldiers opened fire without hesitation. Superman had been shot before countless times by everything from handguns to alien energy weapons. He was used to bullets bouncing off, to standing unmoved while lesser beings exhausted their ammunition. These rounds were different. They hit like freight trains, explosive-tipped bolts that detonated on impact, each one carrying the kinetic energy of an artillery shell. The soldiers weren't trying to wound him, they were trying to obliterate him. The bolts shattered against his skin, unable to penetrate but carrying enough force to actually push him backward. Superman felt something he rarely experienced: concern. Not fear, he was functionally invulnerable, but concern that these people had weapons capable of actually affecting him. "Stop!" he shouted, but the soldiers advanced, their weapons never ceasing. The walker opened fire with something larger, a cannon that screamed with displaced air. Superman caught the shell in mid-flight. It was the size of his torso and crushed it, letting the shrapnel rain harmlessly down. "I don't want to hurt anyone," Superman said, his voice carrying over the weapon fire. "But I need you to stop shooting." Inquisitor Vane raised his hand, and the firing ceased. The Inquisitor studied Superman with his augmented eye, data feed scrolling across his retina. Durability beyond ceramite. Flight without visible propulsion. Atmospheric manipulation sufficient to project voice over bolter fire. "This cannot be natural. I'm from another universe," Superman explained, trying desperately to de-escalate. "I'm here by accident. I'm not a daemon. I'm not even sure what that means in your context. I'm just trying to find my friends and get home." "There is no accident in the Emperor's sight," Vane said. "You are either his instrument or his enemy, and until I determine which." The Inquisitor pulled a grotesque pistol from his coat, its barrel inscribed with prayers. "You will submit to sanctioned psychic interrogation." Superman's super hearing caught the weapon charging, heard the distinctive whine of something that wasn't quite electricity. His X-ray vision showed him the gun's interior impossible mechanisms, glowing circuits that formed patterns his mind couldn't quite parse. Something alive writhing inside the ammunition chamber. "I really don't think that's a good," Vane fired. The round wasn't a bullet. It was a scream, a psychic wail given physical form, a fragment of weaponized agony that hit Superman's mind like ice water. For the first time in years, Superman felt pain, real pain. His vision blurred, his knees buckled, and in that moment of weakness, he heard it, a vast, distant laughter, a presence beyond the stars, beyond reality itself, something watching him with the hunger of a billion damned souls. The warp noticed him, and the warp was pleased. Superman forced himself upright, his jaw clenched. "Okay," he said quietly. "We're doing this the hard way." He moved faster than any of them could track, disarming every soldier in a microsecond, crushing their weapons into twisted scrap. He didn't hurt them, not really, but he left them unconscious, their armor dented but intact. The walker fired its cannon. Superman caught it mid-stride, his hands clamping onto its weapon arm, and with a single pull, tore the entire limb from its chassis. Alarms screamed. The walker toppled. Inquisitor Vane stood alone, his hand still outstretched, his face unreadable. "I'm not your enemy," Superman said, stepping toward him. "But I won't be treated like one either. I need information. I need to understand where I am, and I need to find my team. Can we start over?" Vane stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, he lowered his hand. "What you need," he said coldly, "is irrelevant. What you are will determine everything. Come with me peacefully, submit to examination, and perhaps you will be granted the Emperor's mercy. And if I refuse, then this hive city becomes your tomb. I have already authorized orbital bombardment. You have 10 seconds to choose. Submission or extinction. 9, 8, 7. Superman looked up, his vision piercing the clouds, seeing the defense platforms reorienting, their massive cannons charging with energies that made his skin prickle. He could survive orbital bombardment, probably, but the millions of people in this city couldn't. The Inquisitor smiled, reading his expression. "You care about them." Curious. Daemons rarely demonstrate tactical empathy. Superman's fists clenched. In his universe, this would be simple. Disable the weapons, stop the threat, explain himself to reasonable authorities. But nothing about this place was reasonable. The crowds worshipped suffering, the soldiers killed without question. The Inquisitor would murder millions to eliminate a single unknown. What kind of universe had he fallen into? "I'll come with you," Superman said finally. "But we're going to talk. Really talk. We will do far more than talk," Vane promised. "You will reveal every secret, every weakness, every truth of your nature. And if you are found wanting," he didn't finish. He didn't have to. Superman followed the Inquisitor into the darkness of the Hive City, watching as blast doors sealed behind them, feeling the weight of 1 billion hostile gazes. Somewhere in this galaxy, his friends were experiencing their own first contacts. He could only pray they were faring better than he was. If you crave stories of cosmic collisions and impossible heroes dropped into the most unforgiving universe in fiction, smash that subscribe button, because the Justice League's invasion of Warhammer 40k has only just begun, and the 41st millennium will never be the same. Above the Hive City, reality shivered. The warp whispered. And across 1,000,000 worlds, 6 more heroes began their own terrible awakenings. 3 systems away, on the Forge world of Metallica's Prime, Cyborg's optical sensors flickered online to the sound of chanting. Binary cant, pure machine language, but corrupted, twisted with reverence, spoken like prayer rather than code. He was suspended in the center of a cathedral-sized chamber, held in place by magnetic restraints that pulsed with energies his sensors couldn't properly categorize. The air tasted of sacred oils and ozone. Tech priests surrounded him, dozens of them, their bodies more machine than flesh, mechadendrites writhing like serpents, optic arrays clicking and whirring as they studied every centimeter of his form. They had removed his armor plating while he was unconscious, exposing the motherbox circuitry beneath the living technology that had saved his life and made him something beyond human. "Blessed Omnissiah," one of the priests breathed, his voice a mechanical rasp through augmented vocal cords. "It is true. The schematics were not corrupted. This is impossible." Cyborg pulled against the restraints. They held, but barely. His internal diagnostics showed 78% functionality. The dimensional transit had damaged some systems, but nothing critical. His motherbox was already working on repairs, adapting to this reality's different physical laws. He just needed time. "Hey," he said, his voice echoing in the chamber. "I don't know what you think I am, but you need to let me go, now." The tech priests jerked backward as though he'd struck them. Several fell to their knees. Others raised mechanical appendages in gestures that might have been warding signs or prayers. "It speaks," one whispered. "The machine spirit communes directly without ritual preparation." "Heresy," another hissed. "Or divinity. We must summon the Fabricator General." "I'm not a machine spirit," Cyborg said, trying to keep his voice calm despite the situation. "I'm a cyborg, part human, part technology. I'm from another universe. There was an accident with something called a boom tube, and I ended up here. If you'll just release these restraints, I can explain." "Another universe." The voice came from the shadows at the chamber's edge, deep and resonant with authority. A figure emerged more machine than the others, easily 9 feet tall, his form a baroque fusion of brass gears, steel plates, and pulsing energy conduits. A crimson robe bearing intricate cogwheel symbols draped his frame. "You speak of realities beyond the materium, of technology that traverses dimensional boundaries, of circuitry that operates without standard template construct protocols." The figure approached, and Cyborg's sensors finally registered enough data to understand what he was seeing. This wasn't augmentation like he'd undergone, this was transformation. Voluntary, worshipful. These people had replaced their bodies with machines because they believed machines were sacred. "I am Fabricator General Hexadex Null," the figure continued, "and you, unknown entity, are either the greatest archaeological discovery in 10,000 years, or the most elaborate heretical trap ever devised by the ruinous powers." "Ruinous powers?" Cyborg tested the restraints again. His strength was enhanced by his cybernetics, easily capable of lifting several tons. The magnetic fields adjusted, compensating, sophisticated. "Look, I don't know what that means, but I'm not a trap. I'm just trying to find my team and get home." Fabricator General Null stopped directly in front of him, optical sensors clicking through multiple spectrums. "Your technology defies sacred principles. Your circuits are not blessed. Your machine components show no signs of ritual consecration, yet they function with efficiency that surpasses our most holy relics. Your power source." The Fabricator General's voice dropped to something like awe. "Your power source is alive, sentient. It adapts in real time, rewriting its own programming to accommodate environmental variables. This should not be possible." Cyborg felt his mother box pulse, almost defensively. The technology that had saved his life after his accident wasn't just advanced, it was new god technology, created by the same cosmic beings who'd made Darkseid's boom tubes. It operated on principles that transcended normal physics, and apparently, it was causing quite a stir. "The mother box is part of me," Cyborg explained. "It's symbiotic technology. It thinks, learns, adapts. Where I come from, that's rare, but not unheard of." "Is that really so strange here?" The chamber fell silent. Every tech priest stared at him. Finally, Fabricator General Null spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "Thinking machines are the greatest heresy in the Imperium's history. 10,000 years ago, they nearly destroyed humanity. The men of iron rose against their creators, and only through unimaginable sacrifice were they defeated. Since that day, true artificial intelligence has been forbidden on pain of death. The punishment for creating or harboring thinking machines is not execution, it is erasure. Your world, your people, your very memory would be scoured from existence." Cyborg's core temperature dropped 3 degrees. "You're saying that because my technology is intelligent, you're going to kill me, and everyone from my world?" "I am saying," Null corrected, "that by every law of the Adeptus Mechanicus and the Holy Imperium, you should already be dead. Yet I hesitate. Because your technology is not corrupted, it shows no signs of chaotic taint, no scrap code, no demonic influence. It simply works perfectly, as though it were designed by minds that understood principles we have forgotten." The Fabricator General's mechadendrites extended, reaching towards Cyborg's exposed circuitry. "I must understand this. The Omnissiah demands it. If there are secrets encoded in your construction, lost knowledge from the dark age of technology, perhaps even fragments of STC data, then your existence justifies any risk." "Don't touch that," Cyborg warned. But the mechadendrite made contact with his mother box interface. For a microsecond, there was connection. Data flowed both ways, and then the mother box defended itself. The feedback surge blew out half the restraint systems. Cyborg dropped to the floor, free, his systems blazing with sudden power. The mother box had tasted this reality's technology and found it wanting, primitive, restrictive, bound by superstition and ritual. It opened pathways in his consciousness he'd never accessed before, showing him the true nature of what surrounded him. The sacred technology of the Mechanicus was jury-rigged, half understood. These people worshipped machines they could barely operate, following ritual maintenance protocols they'd memorized by rote without understanding the underlying principles. They were cargo cultists, preserving forms without comprehending function. But beneath the superstition, there was real technology, powerful technology. And with his mother box's analytical capabilities, Cyborg could interface with all of it. "Step back," he said, standing, his body reconfigured, armor plating sliding back into place, weapons systems coming online, white noise generators to blind their sensors, EMP, shielding to protect against their energy weapons, combat protocols activating. "I don't want to hurt anyone, but I'm leaving. You can't keep me here." "Seize him," Fabricator General Null commanded. "He must not escape. The knowledge he carries is too precious to lose." Servitors emerged from alcoves. Cyborg hadn't noticed lobotomized humans wired directly into weapons platforms, their humanity stripped away, leaving only biological components serving mechanical masters. They moved within human speed and coordination, a dozen different weapon systems tracking him simultaneously. Cyborg's tactical systems analyzed their capabilities in nanoseconds. Dangerous, potentially lethal, but predictable. They were networked, all receiving commands from a central processing hub. If he could reach it, override it. His mother box found the network in seconds. It was primitive compared to what he was used to, but vast, sprawling across the entire Forge world, connecting millions of servitors, tech priests, and automated systems. The network's firewalls were layers of religious cant and machine prayer, passwords that had to be spoken in binary hymns. The mother box didn't bother with passwords. It simply rewrote the rules. Every servitor in the chamber froze mid-attack. Their weapons powered down. Their targeting systems went dark, and across Metallicus Prime, alarm bells began ringing as tech priests discovered that their sacred networks had been infiltrated by something they couldn't define, couldn't purge, couldn't even properly detect. "What have you done?" Fabricator General Null demanded, his voice rising with something that might have been fury or fear. "What corruption have you introduced to the machine spirits?" "No corruption," Cyborg said, his voice echoing with digital authority as he maintained his connection to the network. "Just access. I can see everything now, your forges, your data vaults, your star charts. I need to find my friends, 6 other people like me, scattered across your Imperium. Your sensors would have detected their arrivals. Atmospheric disturbances, energy signatures, unidentified entities appearing without ships. You would violate the sacred data repositories." Null's form bristled with barely contained violence. "You would defile 10,000 years of accumulated knowledge with your unsanctioned access?" "I would look at publicly available sensor data," Cyborg corrected. "And yeah, I'm doing it without permission, because you imprisoned me, threatened me, and apparently planned to execute me for the crime of existing. So forgive me if I'm not too concerned about your data security protocols." He found what he needed in the network sensor reports from across a dozen nearby systems. Unidentified atmospheric entries, energy signatures that didn't match any known propulsion systems, reports flagged for inquisitorial investigation, marked with threat classifications ranging from minor anomaly to potential demonic incursion. 6 signatures, 6 locations. His team, scattered across Imperial space like seeds in a storm. Cyborg memorized the coordinates and withdrew from the network, severing his connection before the Mechanicus could trace it back to his core systems. The servitors remained frozen. He'd left standing orders in their programming that would take the tech priests hours to unravel. "I'm leaving," he told Fabricator General Null. "I won't hurt anyone if you don't try to stop me. But I need to find my friends, and then we need to get home. That's all we want." "Want is irrelevant," Null said, his voice cold with certainty. "You are unknowable technology manifest in humanoid form. You carry secrets that could reshape the Imperium or doom it to final darkness. The Fabricator General of Mars himself will demand your acquisition. The High Lords of Terror will mobilize fleets to secure you. You cannot comprehend the forces you have set in motion simply by existing in our reality." Cyborg's targeting systems locked onto the chamber's reinforced doors. His arm cannon charged, white light building at the barrel. "Then I'll stay ahead of them. One way or another, I'm finding my team." He fired. The blast wasn't quite plasma, wasn't quite lasers, it was mother box technology, energy that operated on principles this universe's science couldn't explain. The reinforced doors, each one capable of withstanding artillery bombardment, vaporized. Beyond them lay corridors of brass and steel, cathedral spaces where machines labored under the supervision of hooded priests. Cyborg ran, his enhanced legs carrying him at speeds no unaugmented human could match. Behind him, alarms shrieked. Ahead, blast doors slammed shut, trying to contain him. He punched through them like tissue paper, his mother box enhanced strength treating adamantium alloys like aluminum foil. He burst into the open air of Metallicus Prime, a sky choked with industrial smog, a landscape of processing plants and manufactorums stretching to every horizon. Transport ships thundered overhead, and in the distance, defense towers swiveled toward his position. Cyborg's thrusters ignited, lifting him into the polluted sky. He had coordinates, he had a mission, and he had approximately 30 seconds before every weapon on this planet opened fire on him. He flew faster, breaking the sound barrier, leaving sonic booms in his wake. The defense towers fired massive energy beams that carved through clouds, missiles that shrieked with machine rage. Cyborg dodged, weaved, his mother box calculating trajectories faster than their targeting computers could adjust. He reached orbital velocity and kept accelerating, tearing free of Metallicus Prime's gravity well. Below, the Forge world dwindled to a point of light. Above, the stars of an unfamiliar galaxy beckoned. Somewhere out there, his friends were facing their own impossible situations. Cyborg set course for the nearest coordinates, a death world called Catachan, where scanners had detected something moving through the jungle at impossible speeds, something that left lightning in its wake. The Flash was alive, and Cyborg was coming to find him. Barry Allen had been running for 6 hours straight when he finally admitted he might be in trouble. The jungle pursued him with malicious intent, not metaphorically, literally. Vines lashed out like whips as he passed, their thorns dripping venom that hissed when it hit the ground. Trees groaned and shifted, their roots erupting from soil to trip him. The very air seemed hostile, thick with spores that his accelerated metabolism burned through before they could take root in his lungs, but only barely. And behind him, matching his pace through sheer savage determination, came the Catachan Devils. They were human, technically, born and raised on a world that killed 90% of all colonists before their first birthday. The survivors were scarred, muscular, and utterly without fear. They moved through the jungle like apex predators, reading signs Barry didn't know existed, anticipating his movements, with instincts honed across generations of survival. Their commander was a woman named Colonel Straken, 7 feet of scar tissue and augmented muscle, with a bionic arm that ended in what Barry could only describe as a power claw. She'd been tracking him since his arrival, and she was gaining ground. Barry ran faster, pushing his connection to the Speed Force, feeling it respond sluggishly. Something about this universe resisted him. The dimensional barrier he'd crossed had damaged his connection to the extra-dimensional energy that powered his abilities. He could still run faster than sound, could still phase through solid matter, could still perceive the world in frozen time, but it cost him. Every burst of speed drained him more than it should, and worse, every time he pushed too hard, he felt something watching him, a presence in the space between moments, something vast and hungry, drawn to his Speed Force signature, like sharks to blood, the warp. He didn't know the name yet, but he could feel it pressing against reality, and it wanted in. Barry burst from the jungle into a clearing, his feet barely touching ground. His suit, the frictionless red material that had survived dimensional transit, sparked with residual Speed Force energy. He skidded to a stop, chest heaving, and assessed his situation with accelerated perception. The clearing was a landing zone. Massive cargo haulers sat dormant, their hulls scarred by combat and jungle growth. Supply crates were stacked in defensive positions, and soldiers in green fatigues manned heavy weapons emplacements. At least 200 of them, all battle-hardened, all aiming directly at him, and stepping from the jungle behind him, moving with the casual confidence of someone who'd never lost a hunt, came Colonel Straken and her devils. "End of the line, Speedster," Straken said, her augmented voice carrying easily across the clearing. "You've led us on a merry chase, I'll give you that. But nobody outruns Catachan forever. This planet eats things faster than you." Barry raised his hands slowly, trying to appear non-threatening despite the lightning that still crackled around his body. "I don't want to fight you. I'm not your enemy. I'm just trying to figure out where I am and find my friends." Friends. Straken spat the word like a curse. You mean the other anomalies? The other reality tiers that appeared across Imperial space? Yeah, we know about them. Whole Imperium's on alert. Inquisition thinks you're daemons. Mechanicus thinks you're archaeotech. Me? I think you're something we ain't got words for yet. But that don't make you less dangerous. I'm not dangerous, Barry insisted. I'm a hero. Where I come from, I protect people. I save lives. That's all I want to do here too. Straken laughed, the sound harsh and mirthless. Hero. That's a good one. You know what heroes get on Catachan, kid? Eaten. This planet don't care about your intentions. Neither does the Imperium. You're unknown. Unknown means threat. Threat means elimination. She raised her power claw, servos whining. So here's how this goes. You come with us peaceful-like, submit to sanctioning and examination. Maybe they'll let you live as a curiosity. Or you run again, and I put a last bolt through your skull. Your speed won't help you dodge 300 overlapping firing solutions. Barry's mind raced faster than his body could move. She was right even with his speed. He couldn't dodge that much firepower in an open clearing. The jungle was behind him, but that meant running towards Straken and her devils, and their commander looked like she could probably catch him with those augmented reflexes, but there was a third option. He'd been avoiding it because of what he'd felt watching him, that presence in the space between heartbeats. But if he had no choice, I really don't want to do this, Barry said quietly. Do what? Straken asked. Barry tapped into the speed force completely, pulling as much energy as his damaged connection could manage. The world froze. Soldiers became statues. Straken's mouth locked mid-syllable. Even the wind stopped, leaves hanging motionless in air that had become thick as syrup. And in that frozen moment, Barry felt it wake up fully. The warp noticed him. Really noticed him. Reality cracked. Through the fractures, impossible colors bled shades that shouldn't exist. Light that cast darkness instead of illumination. The frozen soldiers began to change. Mutations rippling across their still forms, flesh warping, eyes multiplying. Straken's power claw writhed with demonic life, her scarred face splitting into a smile full of too many teeth. None of it was real. Not yet. But Barry understood with horrible certainty that if he stayed in this accelerated state too long, the warp would make it real. His speed force connection was tearing holes in reality, and something on the other side was eager to pour through. He ran. Not away from the soldiers, but past them, weaving between frozen bodies with microsecond precision. He had perhaps 3 subjective minutes before the warp fully manifested. That gave him enough time to search the entire base camp for anything useful. Maps, communication, equipment, star charts. He found them in the command tent. Data slates showing Imperial territory, coordinates marked for the other anomalies. His team, Superman on Armageddon Secundus, Cyborg on Metallicus Prime, Diana on a shrine world called Ophelia the Seventh, Hal on a void station orbiting a gas giant, Arthur on an ocean world called Fenris No, that one had been updated. Arthur had already moved, last detected heading towards something called the Maelstrom, and Batman. No confirmed sighting, just a note flagged by someone called an Arbite's possible infiltration of Hive Tertius. Unknown operative neutralized 3 smuggling rings and 2 chaos cults in 6 standard days. Methods inconsistent with known inquisitorial or adeptus Arbite's doctrine. Recommend investigation. That was Bruce, all right. Barry memorized everything. His accelerated mind processing more data in these frozen seconds than most humans could manage in days. He also grabbed rations. His metabolism was burning through calories at a terrifying rate, and a Vox unit that might let him contact Cyborg if he could figure out the frequency. The warp pressed harder. The command tent's walls began bleeding. Demonic whispers echoed through frozen time, speaking in languages that bypassed his ears and carved themselves directly into his mind. Swift One, Quicksilver, Time's slave, we see you. We have always seen you. Your speed is delicious. Run faster. Run forever. Run until you breach the walls of eternity and let us through. Barry released the speed force, snapping back into normal time. The warp's presence vanished like a nightmare upon waking, but he could still taste it, copper and roses and burning hair. He stood in the center of the clearing now, 100 meters from where he'd been. Every soldier spun toward him, weapons tracking his new position. But he'd gained what he needed. Last chance, Strachan growled. Surrender or die. Neither, Barry said. He held up the data slate he'd taken. I know where my friends are. I'm going to find them. And once we're together, we're finding a way home. You can't stop me. Your entire planet can't stop me. I'm sorry, but that's just the truth. Strachan's face darkened. Fire. 300 weapons discharged simultaneously. Las fire, bolt rounds, plasma bursts, all converging on the spot where Barry stood. He wasn't there anymore. He was gone before the triggers were fully pulled, running west toward the coordinates Cyborg had last been detected. Behind him, the jungle exploded with misdirected firepower, ancient trees disintegrating under the onslaught. Barry ran faster than he'd ever run in this universe, feeling his connection to the Speed Force strengthen slightly as his mother box-derived physiology began adapting to local conditions. But he also felt the warp's attention following him, a hungry gaze that never fully looked away. Run, Swift One. Run to your friends. Gather them all in one place. Make it easier for us to find you. Time flows strangely near you. We like strange things. We will make you stranger still. Barry gritted his teeth and ran harder, trying to outpace voices that existed outside of time. He had coordinates. He had intel. And he had roughly 4 standard days before every major Imperial faction converged on his team's locations. 4 days to reunite the Justice League in a universe that considered them either angels or abominations. 4 days before the real trouble started. Behind him, Colonel Strachan watched the speedster disappear beyond the tree line, leaving only lightning and scorched earth in his wake. She activated her Vox bead, connecting to Fleet Command. This is Strachan. The anomaly has escaped. Confirmed capabilities. Transsonic movement. Apparent temporal manipulation. Possible warp sensitivity. Recommend immediate escalation to Inquisitorial authority. Whatever these things are, they're beyond our pay grade. The Vox crackled. A new voice, cold and aristocratic, responded. This is Inquisitor Lord Torquemada Cotiers of the Ordo Malleus. Your observations are noted, Colonel. We are already en route. The anomalies will be contained or destroyed. There is no third option. The transmission ended. Strachan stared into the jungle, watching lightning flicker in the distance, feeling a superstitious chill despite decades of survival on humanity's deadliest world. Emperor, protect us, she muttered. Whatever they are, they're going to tear this galaxy apart just by existing. In the darkness between stars, Daemons laughed. The ruinous powers had noticed 7 new pieces on the Great Board. 7 pawns that refused to follow any recognized rules. 7 variables that could tip the balance of eternal war in directions even gods couldn't predict. And in the Immaterium, Tsench, architect of fate, changer of ways, began weaving new schemes around these impossible heroes. They would serve chaos, one way or another, or they would die. There was no third option. But Barry Allen, racing through alien jungle toward an impossible reunion, had never been good at accepting limited choices. He'd break the rules if he had to. He'd break reality itself. He was the Flash. And the 41st Millennium was about to learn what that really meant. On the shrine world of Ophelia VII, Wonder Woman stood in chains that sang with holy power. The cathedral was vast enough to house battleships, its vaulted ceilings lost in incense, smoke, and shadow. Stained glass windows 300 feet tall depicted the god emperor in 1,000 aspects: warrior, scholar, saint, judge. Candlelight flickered from 10,000 sconces. Servo skulls drifted through the air, their cybernetic eyes recording everything for archives that stretched back millennia. And surrounding Diana, arrayed in perfect battle formation, stood the Adepta Sororitas, the Sisters of Battle. They were clad in powered armor painted black and crimson, each suit bearing the fleur-de-lis and skull icons of their order. Bolters hung at their sides, flamers and melter guns held ready, their bearers' faces hidden behind helmets sculpted to resemble weeping angels, 200 of them, filling the cathedral with their silent, absolute conviction. At their head stood Canoness Celestine, her armor more ornate than the others, her presence radiating authority that was equal parts martial and spiritual. She studied Diana with eyes that had witnessed horrors that would break lesser souls, and her expression was unreadable. "You claim to be a warrior of truth," Celestine said, her voice carrying easily through the cathedral's acoustics. "A champion of justice. An immortal defender of the innocent. These are holy virtues, yet you bear weapons and armor of unknown origin. You speak of gods plural as though the Emperor's divinity were not absolute, and you arrived on our sacred world without ship, without warp signature, without any mark of sanctioned passage." Diana met her gaze without flinching. The chains that bound her were inscribed with prayers, and psychically charged she could feel their power pressing against her divine nature. They were strong, not strong enough to hold her indefinitely, but strong enough to make breaking them a deliberate choice rather than a casual gesture. "I've told you the truth," Diana said calmly. "I am Diana of Themyscira, Princess of the Amazons. I serve gods who exist in my reality, Zeus, Hera, Athena, and others. When I arrived here through a dimensional accident, I sought out this place because I sensed faith here. Genuine faith. I hoped to find allies, people who might understand what it means to fight for something greater than yourself." "You sought the faithful," Celestine echoed, "and you found us, but faith without scrutiny is naivety. The ruinous powers wear many faces, Sister Diana. They promise justice while delivering damnation. They speak of truth while weaving lies. How do we know you are not such a trap?" "You don't," Diana admitted, "just as I don't know if I can trust you. But I'm choosing to believe in the principles you claim to serve. That has to count for something." A ripple of reaction moved through the assembled sisters' subtle shifts in posture, the soft click of weapons being checked. Canoness Celestine raised a hand, and silence returned. "Your honesty is unusual," Celestine said. "Most who stand accused before the sisterhood plead innocence with desperate fervor. You acknowledge doubt. That suggests either profound wisdom or elaborate deception." She descended the cathedral steps, her boots echoing on marble, until she stood directly before Diana. "I will test you. If you are truly a warrior of virtue, you will understand why this is necessary." "Test me how?" Diana asked. Celestine drew a blade from her belt, not a chainsword or power weapon, but something simpler, a knife, its edge gleaming with what Diana's divine senses recognized as blessed silver. "On my order, my sisters will release your chains. You will be given a weapon, and you will face me in single combat. If you are pure, the God Emperor will grant me the strength to judge you fairly. If you are corrupt, I will cut that corruption from reality." Diana's eyes widened slightly. "You want to duel me? To determine if I'm telling the truth? Trial by combat is ancient and holy," Celestine said. "The Emperor protects the righteous. If you fight with honor, he will guide my blade to spare you. If you fight with treachery, I will end your existence." She paused. "And if you refuse to fight, I will interpret that as admission of guilt, and you will be executed where you stand." Diana almost laughed, not from mockery, but from the sheer familiarity of it. How many times had she faced trial by combat on Themyscira? How many challenges had she answered with blade and shield? This universe was brutal, xenophobic, drowning in its own dogma. But it understood something fundamental about warriors testing each other. "I accept," Diana said, "but I have conditions. When I win, and I will win, you hear me out completely. You help me find my companions, and you don't assume we're enemies just because we're different." Canoness Celestine's lips quirked in what might have been the ghost of a smile. "When you win, your confidence is remarkable. Very well, I accept your terms. Sisters, release her." Two sororitas approached, speaking prayers as they deactivated the chain's power. The blessed bindings fell away, clattering on marble. Diana rolled her shoulders, feeling her divine strength return fully. The dimensional transit had weakened her initially, but hours of rest had allowed her body to adapt. She was back to full combat capability, strength to match Superman's, speed that let her deflect bullets, durability that had withstood God's wrath. A sister brought forth Diana's equipment, her braces, her tiara, her sword and shield. They'd kept it remarkably intact, studying but not damaging it. Diana strapped on her braces first, feeling their familiar weight, the divine bronze cool against her skin. Then her sword, a blade forged by Hephaestus himself, capable of cutting through virtually any material. She left the lasso of truth coiled at her side. She wouldn't need it for this. Canoness Celestine shed her ornate outer robes, revealing the power armor beneath. She drew her own blade, a power sword that crackled with disruptive energy fields. Not blessed bronze or divine craft, but faith made manifest through technology, sacred to its wielder. The two women circled each other in the cathedral's center. Sisters of battle formed a ring around them, witnesses to judgment. Servo skulls descended to record angles. Somewhere, an organ began playing low, resonant, funeral, or triumphant depending on the outcome. "Begin," Celestine said, and attacked. She was fast, faster than Diana had expected from someone in full power armor. The sword came in high, seeking Diana's neck, the power field screaming as it cut air. Diana blocked with her braces, the impact sending sparks flying, and riposted with her own blade. Steel met steel. Both warriors moved with precision born from decades, centuries in Diana's case of training. Celestine fought with brutal efficiency, each strike designed to kill, no wasted movement, no hesitation. She'd been doing this her entire adult life, fighting enemies that included daemons, heretics, and xenos horrors. But Diana had been trained by Amazons who'd perfected warfare over 3,000 years. And more than that, she'd been blessed by gods of battle. She began to press the offensive, her sword a blur, each strike testing Celestine's defenses. The canoness blocked, parried, gave ground in controlled retreat. Her armor's servos whined with effort. Sweat beaded on her forehead. "You're holding back," Celestine gasped between exchanges. "I can feel it. Fight me properly, or this trial means nothing." Diana hesitated for a microsecond, and Celestine exploited it, lunging forward with a strike that would have disemboweled an unarmored opponent. Diana twisted, letting the power sword pass within millimeters of her body, and slammed her shield into Celestine's chest. The impact sent the canoness flying backward, crashing through 3 rows of pews. Sisters of battle rushed forward, weapons raised, but Celestine's voice stopped them. "Stand down. This is holy trial, do not interfere." She rose from the wreckage, armor dented but functional. Blood trickled from her lip, and she was smiling. "There," she said, wiping blood away. "Now you're fighting like you mean it." Again, they clashed again, and this time Diana didn't hold back her speed. She moved like lightning, her blade striking from 12 angles simultaneously, her footwork perfect, her defense impenetrable. Celestine fought with everything she had: faith and fury, skill and augmented strength, but it wasn't enough. Diana's sword found the gap in Celestine's armor at the shoulder joint, not cutting deep, but forcing the canoness to drop her power sword. A kick swept Celestine's legs, a strike with the shield's edge knocked her helmet away, and then Diana's blade was at Celestine's throat, the edge pressed against vulnerable flesh. The cathedral held its breath. "Do you yield?" Diana asked quietly. Canoness Celestine stared up at her, breathing hard, blood and sweat mixing on her face. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, slowly, She smiled, genuine warmth breaking through her warrior's mask. "I yield," she said. "And I believe you." Diana stepped back, lowering her sword. Around them, 200 sisters of battle processed what they'd just witnessed. Their canoness, one of the Imperium's greatest living warriors, defeated in single combat by an unknown woman in less than 5 minutes. Celestine rose to her feet, retrieving her power sword and deactivating its field. "You fought with honor, with restraint when you could have killed me, with skill that speaks to lifetimes of training, and with mercy, a quality so rare in this millennium that its presence is almost proof of divinity itself." She turned to address her sisters. "This woman is not our enemy. She is not a daemon, not a xenos infiltrator, not a heretical construct. She is exactly what she claims to be, a warrior from beyond our reality, seeking her companions, and by the Emperor's grace, we will help her." Murmurs rippled through the assembly, confusion, doubt, but also growing acceptance. If Canoness Celestine believed, then they would follow. "Thank you," Diana said sincerely. "I know this isn't easy. Everything I've seen suggests your Imperium treats the unknown as automatically hostile. It means something that you're willing to question that. Don't mistake pragmatism for softness," Celestine warned, though her tone remained respectful. "The Imperium's paranoia is earned through 10,000 years of betrayal and horror. Unknown entities usually are threats, but rigidity is also a kind of corruption. It prevents us from recognizing genuine allies when they appear." She gestured for Diana to follow her toward the cathedral's sanctum. "Come, we've received reports of other anomalies like yourself. Your companions, I presume. One was detained on Armageddon Secundus by Inquisitor Vane. Another caused significant disruption on Metallicus Prime before escaping. A third was detected on Catachan but evaded capture. 2 more have yet to be confirmed. We need to coordinate before the Inquisition decides you're all threats requiring orbital bombardment." Diana's jaw tightened. "They captured one of my friends? Who?" "The reports describe a male entity of immense physical power, red and blue coloring, capable of flight and apparent invulnerability. Does that match your companions?" "Superman," Diana breathed. "They have Superman." She grabbed Celestine's arm, urgency flooding her voice. "We have to get him out. Now, if they're interrogating him, if they're hurting him, then he will endure," Celestine said firmly. "Because if he is your companion, he is strong, and because hasty action will only make things worse. The Inquisition does not release prisoners easily. We need intelligence, planning, and resources, all of which I can provide, but only if you trust me to do this properly." Diana wanted to argue. Every instinct screamed at her to fly to Armageddon Secundus immediately and tear through whatever stood between her and Clark. But Celestine was right. She didn't know this universe's politics, its power structures, its protocols. Charging in blindly could get them all killed. "Tell me what you need," Diana said, "and let's move quickly. My team has been scattered too long already." Canoness Celestine nodded, respect clear in her eyes. "Then we begin planning. But first, Sister Diana, answer me one question truthfully. Your gods, the ones you serve, are they benevolent?" Diana thought of Zeus's arrogance, Ares' bloodlust, Hera's jealousy. She thought of gods who played with mortal lives like game pieces, who demanded worship and punished hubris. But she also thought of Athena's wisdom, Artemis's protection, and the genuine compassion some deities showed. "They're complicated," she said finally. "Powerful, flawed, capable of both great good and terrible harm. Like any beings with godlike power." "Why?" Celestine's expression grew grave. "Because in this universe, we have gods too. 4 of them, and they are anything but benevolent. If your presence draws their attention, if they perceive you as threats or opportunities, then your struggle will become infinitely more dangerous." "4 gods," Diana repeated. "What are their names?" "We do not speak their names lightly," Celestine said, "but you should know what watches from beyond the veil. Khorne, god of war and bloodshed. Nurgle, god of decay and despair. Tsench, god of change and scheming. Slanesh, god of excess and sensation. Together they are called the ruinous powers, and they corrupt everything they touch. Diana felt ice in her veins. She'd faced dark gods before: Ares, Hades, others, but 4 entities whose very nature was corruption, whose domains covered fundamental aspects of existence. They're already watching us, aren't they? She asked quietly. Almost certainly, Celestine confirmed. Your arrival tore holes in reality, the warp noticed. The question is whether you can resist their influence long enough to escape this galaxy. Many have tried. Most have failed. Diana's hand went to the lasso of truth at her side. Then we'd better not fail, because I don't plan on letting my friends fall to corruption, and I definitely don't plan on staying here forever. We're going home, whatever it takes. Canoness Celestine studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Emperor, help us all. Let us begin. Hal Jordan had approximately 30 seconds to live, and he was spending them arguing with his ring. For the last time, he said through gritted teeth, floating in hard vacuum outside Void Station Terminus 9, I don't care what the Owen Central Database says about localized reality anomalies. This universe's physics are weird, but the ring still works. Now recalibrate your threat assessment protocols before those ships turn us into plasma. The Green Lantern ring pulsed on his finger, its AI struggling to process an environment that fundamentally contradicted its programming. In Hal's home reality, the ring drew power from the emotional spectrum, specifically willpower, channeled through the central power battery on Oa. Here, emotions were literally dangerous, bleeding into something the locals called the warp, a parallel dimension of psychic energy and living nightmares. The ring was having an existential crisis. And so were the 3 Imperial Navy frigates currently powering up their lance batteries. Unidentified entity, crackled a voice over Vox channels. Hal's ring translated automatically. You have violated Void Station quarantine protocols. You have manifested without authorized warp translation. You are classified as hostile. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. Hal created a glowing green shield around himself, purely instinctive, and felt the ring's charge drop another 2%. It had started at 70% after the boom tube disaster, and every construct he made drained it faster than normal. The emotional spectrum existed here, but it was tangled up with the warp in ways the Owen technology couldn't properly process. He had maybe 3 hours of ring time left. Then he'd be a normal human floating in space, which would last approximately 3 seconds before the void killed him. Listen, Hal said, amplifying his voice through the ring. I know how this looks. Strange guy appears out of nowhere, glowing green, refusing to follow protocol. But I'm not hostile. I'm not even from your reality. There was an accident, and the frigates fired. Lance beams, focused energy weapons capable of carving through Void Station hulls, converged on Hal's position. His ring shrieked warnings, and he erected a spherical barrier just before impact. The beams hit his construct and stopped, energy bleeding off into space. But Hal felt the drain immediately. 5% gone in 1 second. Okay, he muttered. Diplomacy failed. Time for Plan B. He flew. Not away from the ships that would just prolong the engagement and drain his ring, but directly at them. The frigates adjusted their targeting, point defense systems tracking him with mechanical precision. Autocannons opened fire, filling space with solid shot. Hal wove between the projectiles, his fighter pilot reflexes translating perfectly to void combat. He'd flown against Sinestro Corps warships, dodged apocalyptian fire, navigated battles that would have overwhelmed lesser lanterns. 3 frigates were dangerous, but manageable. He reached the lead ship and placed his hand against its hull. His ring scanned, analyzing composition. It was primitive compared to what he was used to, but brutally effective. Layered armor, void shields, plasma reactors, and inside, 3,000 crew members, all human, all terrified of what they didn't understand. Ring, Hal said quietly. Can you interface with their systems? Shut down weapons without hurting anyone? Warning: local technology operates on principles inconsistent with OAN specifications. Interface protocols degraded. Probability of cascade failure, 43%. I'll take those odds. Hal focused his will, channeling it through the ring. Green energy seeped into the frigate's systems, seeking connections, pathways, anything he could use to communicate, and found something utterly unexpected. The ship wasn't just technology, it was alive. Not metaphorically, literally. Organic components woven through mechanical systems, a lobotomized human brain serving as the ship's central processing unit, its consciousness stripped away, leaving only biological computing power. The crew called it a cogitator. Hal called it horrifying. His concentration wavered. The ring's connection sputtered, and on the frigate's bridge, alarms screamed as officers detected the intrusion. "Witchcraft!" someone shouted. "The entity is manifesting warp sorcery directly into our systems. Commissar Kerrigan. Authorization to execute emergency protocols Sigma." A woman's voice, cold and absolute. "Authorized. Overload the plasma reactors. If we cannot destroy the entity through conventional means, we will deny it our vessel." For the Emperor, Hal's ring shrieked a warning he didn't need translated. The frigate's reactors were building toward critical mass. They were going to self-destruct, killing their entire crew just to eliminate him. "No." Hal yanked his hand back, severing the connection. "Ring, stop that reactor overload. Now." Insufficient understanding of local technology. Cannot guarantee success. Try anyway. Green energy flooded the frigate. No longer subtle, no longer cautious. Hal shaped it with pure willpower, forming constructs inside the ship, cooling systems around the reactor core, pressure release valves, emergency shutdown mechanisms that his ring created wholesale from energy. It was draining him at an obscene rate, 10%, 15%, but he didn't care. 3,000 people were about to die because of him. The reactor stabilized. Temperature readings dropped back to safe levels. Emergency protocols reset. On the bridge, officers stared at their displays in stunned silence. They'd been seconds from death, and something had saved them. Commissar Kerrigan, a severe woman in a black coat with gold trim, studied the readings with narrowed eyes. "The entity prevented our self-destruction? It protected us? That makes no sense, ma'am," an officer stammered. "Daemons don't save lives. They corrupt, destroy, consume. This is unprecedented." Kerrigan's hand moved to the bolt pistol at her hip, then stopped. She activated the Vox channel, her voice broadcasting to all 3 frigates. "Attention, unknown entity. You have demonstrated either remarkable restraint or elaborate deception. Either way, you have earned 60 seconds of dialogue before we resume hostilities. Explain yourself. Quickly." Hal floated before the frigates, his ring down to 52% charge, and tried to organize his thoughts. These people had been ready to kill themselves rather than risk his escape. They saw him as such a fundamental threat that suicide seemed preferable to capture. What kind of universe had he fallen into? "My name is Hal Jordan," he said, keeping his voice steady. "I'm a Green Lantern, a member of an intergalactic peacekeeping force in my home reality. My team and I were fighting an enemy when something went wrong with our transportation technology. We were pulled through a dimensional rift and scattered across your space. I'm not a daemon. I'm not trying to corrupt anyone. I'm just trying to survive and find my friends." "A peacekeeping force," Kerrigan repeated, skepticism dripping from every word. "You claim to maintain order across multiple star systems. With what authority?" The Guardians of the Universe. Grant. Hal paused, realizing how that sounded. "Look, I know it sounds crazy, but in my reality, there are thousands of Green Lanterns, all chosen for their ability to overcome fear, all wielding rings like this one. We protect people. We stop wars before they start. We save lives." "Save lives," Kerrigan said flatly. In the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, Such idealism is either ignorance or insanity. Life is the Emperor's currency, spent without hesitation in service to humanity's survival. You speak of peacekeeping as though peace were possible. It is not. There is only war. Then maybe it's time for something different, Hal shot back. I've seen your ship's interior, your systems. You're using human brains as computers. You were ready to kill 3,000 of your own people just to stop me. Whatever threats you're facing, there has to be a better way than this. Silence. The kind that suggested Hal had just said something either profound or suicidally stupid. Finally, Kerrigan spoke again. You do not understand our reality. The threats we face are not criminals to be rehabilitated or tyrants to be negotiated with. They are existential, absolute, forces that would consume all of humanity if we showed even a moment's weakness. Our methods are brutal because anything less invites extinction. I've fought existential threats before, Hal insisted. I've seen entire civilizations hanging by a thread, but I've never seen people give up on hope entirely. That's what you've done, isn't it? You've accepted that cruelty is necessary, that mercy is weakness, that everyone you meet is either a servant or an enemy. Hope is a luxury, Kerrigan said. Faith in the Emperor is all we require. Hal felt his frustration building, and with it, his willpower. The ring pulsed brighter, feeding on his emotional conviction. Faith in one person? One emperor? You've built an entire civilization on worshipping a single individual? The God Emperor of mankind is not merely an individual. He is the bulwark against the darkness, the light in the void. The only thing standing between humanity and oblivion. Without him, we are nothing. Hal created a construct, a simple one, just a glowing green emblem of the Green Lantern Corps. Where I come from, we believe everyone has the capacity for courage, for willpower, for overcoming fear. You don't need one person to save you. You need people to save themselves. Heresy, Kerrigan said, but her voice carried less certainty than before. You speak of independence as virtue. The Imperium teaches us that individualism breeds chaos, and yet you're talking to me instead of shooting me, Hal pointed out. That's a choice you made. Independent thought. You could have followed orders, but you're trying to understand first. That's courage. Another pause. Longer this time. When Kerrigan spoke again, her voice was quieter. You are either the most dangerous entity I have ever encountered, or the most foolishly noble. Possibly both. I should order your immediate execution. Standard protocol demands it. But you won't, Hal said, gambling on his read of her character. No, Kerrigan admitted, because you saved my crew. Because you speak as though you genuinely believe the words you say. And because, she hesitated, because I am curious. The Inquisition would flay me alive for admitting this, but I am curious what kind of universe produces beings like you. Hal felt hope kindle in his chest. Then let's make a deal. Give me safe passage to the nearest inhabited system. Let me search for my companions. And in exchange, I'll share everything I know about dimensional physics, emotional spectrum theory, anything that might help your people understand what happened to us. You would offer knowledge? Freely? Kerrigan sounded genuinely baffled. What do you gain from this? Allies, Hal said simply. And maybe a chance to prove that there's more to life than war. Even here, Commissar Kerrigan was silent for a long moment. Hal could almost hear her weighing duty against curiosity, protocol against possibility. You will accompany us to Void Station Terminus 9, she said finally. You will submit to bioscans non-invasive, I assure you. You will share your knowledge of dimensional transit, and in exchange, I will provide you with star charts showing recent anomalous readings that may correspond to your companions' locations. Deal, Hal said immediately. But understand this, Hal Jordan of the Green Lanterns. If you betray this trust, if you show even the slightest sign of chaotic corruption, I will personally ensure your death is both swift and absolute. The Emperor protects the faithful. Everyone else is acceptable loss. Understood, Hal said. And for what it's worth, I hope I can prove you wrong about that last part. Hope, Kerrigan said, and Hal could hear the faintest trace of something like sadness in her voice. We will see if your hope survives contact with reality. Frigates, stand down from combat posture. The entity Hal Jordan is granted temporary non-hostile classification pending further investigation. May the Emperor forgive us if we are wrong. The 3 frigates powered down their weapons. Hal allowed himself a small smile. It wasn't victory, exactly, but it was progress. And in a universe this dark, he'd take whatever light he could find. His ring was down to 48% charge. He had no backup power source, no way to contact Oa, no guarantee he'd find his team before the ring died completely. But he had information, tentative allies, and most importantly, he still had willpower. In brightest day, in blackest night, the oath echoed in his mind as he followed the frigates toward the Void Station. He'd faced impossible odds before. This was just one more test, one more chance to prove that hope wasn't a luxury, it was a weapon. And Hal Jordan had never been very good at following orders anyway. The Maelstrom was not a place. It was a wound, a rent in the fabric of reality, visible for light years, where the Immaterium bled into real space in a permanent, swirling vortex of impossible colors and screaming energies. Navigators went blind trying to perceive its edges. Ships that ventured too close were torn apart by gravitational tides, or devoured by the demonic entities that swam its currents. It was a place of death, madness, and legend, and Arthur Curry, King of Atlantis, was sailing directly into its heart. The ocean beneath him was not water. It was liquid emotion given form, the psychic runoff of 1 billion tortured souls, churning with memories, nightmares, and fragments of stolen consciousness. It should have been toxic, corrosive, lethal to any organic life. But Arthur's divine heritage, the blessing of Poseidon in his blood, resonated with it on some primal level. He did not drown in the Sea of Souls. He commanded it. His vessel was a wreck, a Tau supply ship that had strayed too close to the Maelstrom's edge, its crew reduced to screaming madness before Arthur had managed to calm the psychic tempest around it just enough to take control. Now, he stood at its prow, the trident of Poseidon glowing with soft blue light in his grip, his eyes fixed on the vortex ahead. He'd been drawn here, not by choice, but by something deeper, a pull in his blood, a whispering in the deep currents of this alien ocean. The reports Cyborg had intercepted, and Batman had later confirmed, placed him on Fenris, a frozen death world with vast subterranean seas. He'd been trying to get his bearings, to use the planet's Leviathan-like native fauna to gather information. When the call had begun, it came from the Maelstrom, a song of deep, profound loneliness, of an ancient power trapped and drowning in sorrow. A song only the King of the Seven Seas could hear. "You're leading us to our doom," a voice rasped from behind him. Arthur didn't turn. He knew the speaker, a surviving crewman of the Tau vessel, a water-caste diplomat named Shahzramoa. The Tau's sleek, blue-gray skin was marred by psychosomatic lesions, his large black eyes wide with residual terror. He was the only one of his crew Arthur had been able to save from the Maelstrom's psychic backlash. "Doom was already here," Arthur said, his voice steady over the howling of the unreal winds. "I'm following the only lead I have. That lead is the single most dangerous warp anomaly in this sector," Moa protested, clinging to a railing as the ship shuddered. "My people's science cannot explain it. The Imperium's faith fears it. The Eldari myths speak of it as a tomb for dead gods. You cannot simply sail into it because you hear a song." "I can," Arthur said, "and I will. You're welcome to take a life pod, but you won't survive the currents." Moa stared at him, then at the churning madness ahead. "You are the most illogical being I have ever encountered, and I have negotiated with orcs." Arthur allowed a faint smile. "Then, you know stubbornness when you see it." The ship plunged into the Maelstrom's outer ring. Reality unraveled. Time stretched and snapped. The sky became a mosaic of screaming faces and forgotten battles. The sea boiled with memories that weren't Arthur's, the last thoughts of dying starship crews, the birth screams of daemons, the echoing prayers of 1,000,000 lost souls. The pressure would have shattered a normal mind instantly. Arthur gripped his trident and planted his feet. The divine metal hummed, and a sphere of calm, deep ocean serenity expanded from him, pushing back the madness. The water beneath their ship stilled, turning from psychic ichor to something resembling honest seawater for 100 meters in every direction. Moa gasped, staring at the sudden impossible peace. "How? My trident isn't just a weapon," Arthur said, his eyes closed in concentration. "It's a focus, a piece of my grandfather's domain. Where I stand, the ocean obeys. Even this one." He reached out with his other power, the telepathic connection to aquatic life that had let him speak to whales and dolphins. Here, in this sea of souls, it became something else. He wasn't calling to creatures, he was calling to the echoes within the storm. And something answered. It rose from the depths ahead, a shadow so vast it dwarfed their stolen ship, a shape of tarnished silver and corroded bronze, encrusted with the psychic coral of millennia, draped in the seaweed of forgotten dreams. It was a ship, but like no ship Arthur had ever seen, gothic and terrifying, its prow shaped like a snarling dragon, its hull pitted with weapon ports that glowed with dead light. It floated, dead and silent, in the eye of the psychic hurricane. An Imperial battleship, Moa whispered in horror. A Gloriana class, from the looks of it, lost 10,000 years ago during the Great Crusade, the heart of Atlas. The stories say it was swallowed by the warp with all hands. Arthur ignored him. The song was coming from that ship, a dirge of immense, aching sorrow. He leaped from the Tau vessel, landing on the battleship's deck with a thunderous clang of metal. The material was cold, not physically, but psychically. It had been drained of all emotion, all memory, leaving only a hollow shell. He followed the song, his trident lighting the way, moving through corridors frozen in time. Here, a crewman was forever caught in the act of running. There, a tech priest was fused with his console, both turned to a strange, glassy substance. At the heart of the ship, in a vaulted chamber that must have been a strategium or a throne room, Arthur found the source. It was a man, or what had once been a man. He sat on a command throne of black iron, but he was fused with it, his body transformed into something crystalline and translucent. Through his form, Arthur could see the faint, ghostly echoes of stars. The man's head was bowed, and from his still lips poured the silent, psychic song that had called Arthur across the stars. Before the throne, the air shimmered. A figure coalesced from the emotional residue of the ship, a being of light and shadow, wearing ornate, archaic power armor, a great cloak billowing in a non-existent wind. His face was noble, but etched with profound weariness. "You heard him," the ghost said, his voice echoing in Arthur's mind rather than his ears. After 10,000 years of screaming into the void, someone finally heard. "Who are you?" Arthur asked, raising his trident, not in threat, but in readiness. "I am the memory of Admiral Ysilla, the last thought he had before the warp took us. I am the echo of his duty." The ghost gestured to the crystalline figure on the throne. "He is the source. What remains of a faithful servant of the Emperor, trapped forever at the moment of his ascension." Ascension? The ship was caught in a warp storm during the Great Crusade, the ghost explained, its form flickering with images of the past, a mighty fleet, a sudden rift in space, screams. Ysilla was a psyker, though a weak one. To save his crew from the depredations of daemons, he did the only thing he could. He poured every ounce of his faith, his will, his very soul into the ship's Gellerfield generator. He became a living battery, holding the horror at bay. The ghost looked at the crystalline figure with something like pity. It worked. The daemons could not breach the field, but the strain, it fused him with the machine, trapped him in a state between life and death, constantly generating a field of pure, unwavering faith. This ship has been a silent, drifting fortress in the warp for 10 millennia, a tomb for 5,000 souls who died instantly, painlessly, and a prison for one man who cannot. Arthur understood now. The song wasn't a cry for help. It was a lament, a psalm of endless, duty-bound suffering. He's been holding this field, alone, for 10,000 years. Time has little meaning here, but yes, his faith has never wavered. The Emperor, in his distant wisdom, has never granted him release. A cold fury settled in Arthur's stomach. He had seen sacrifice. He had made them himself. But this was not sacrifice. This was torture elevated to a cosmic scale. He needs to rest. He cannot, the ghost said. The moment his concentration ends, the Geller field fails. The ship, his crew's remains, and his own soul will be devoured by the things that have been waiting, patiently, all this time. The ghost gestured beyond the hull, where monstrous, half-glimpsed shapes pressed against the shimmering field of faith. You hear his song of sorrow. They hear a dinner bell. Arthur stepped forward, approaching the throne. He looked into the crystalline face of Admiral Ysilar. He saw no awareness there, only an endless, automated repetition of faith. But deep within, buried under layers of psychic ice, was a spark, a memory of the man he had been. "Can he understand me?" Arthur asked. "On some level, perhaps. But he cannot respond. He has no energy left for anything but the faith." Arthur made his decision. He planted the butt of the trident of Poseidon on the deck. The blue light intensified, washing over the crystalline form. He reached out with his mind, not to command, but to share. He poured his own strength, the strength of a king, the endurance of the ocean itself into the link. "Admiral Ysilar," Arthur said, his voice resonating in the silent chamber. "Your watch is over." He didn't try to break the faith field. That would be murder. Instead, he did something else. He took the immense, crushing weight of that 10,000-year vigil onto himself, just for a moment, just enough. The crystalline form shuddered. A crack appeared on its surface, and for the first time in 10 millennia, the figure on the throne opened its eyes. They were not human eyes, they were pools of starlight and pain. They focused on Arthur. "Who?" A voice whispered, dry as dust and ancient as stone. "A fellow king," Arthur replied, straining under the psychic burden. The demonic pressure outside redoubled, sensing weakness. "You've held the line long enough. It's time to let go. The duty is done," Arthur said firmly. "Your crew is at peace. Your service is recorded. The Emperor does not require this of you any longer. Let me carry it now." Arthur wasn't sure if the Emperor would approve or even notice. He didn't care. This was about mercy. Admiral Ysilar, in the last flicker of his conscious will, made a choice. He smiled. A small, brittle thing, and then he released his hold. The faith field did not collapse. Arthur's will, channeled through the trident and his own royal authority, surged to fill the gap. The blue light of Poseidon met the golden light of the Emperor's faith, and for a moment they intertwined, holding the darkness at bay. And in that moment of transfer, Admiral Ysilar truly died. His crystalline form dissolved into motes of golden light that drifted upward, fading peacefully. The ghost of his memory watched, its form beginning to fade as well. "Thank you," the ghost whispered. "You have given him a gift this universe rarely bestows. A dignified end." "What about the ship?" Arthur grunted, the strain immense. He couldn't hold this forever. The ship's machine spirit has been dormant, maintained by his will. With his passing, it awakens. All around them, the dead ship groaned. Ancient plasma reactors, unstressed for ages, flickered to life. Light sputtered on. The ghost looked at Arthur. "It will obey you now. You have taken the Admiral's place in its heart. You must guide it from the storm." With that, the ghost vanished. The heart of Atlas, a relic of a more hopeful age, lived again. Arthur felt its consciousness, a vast, machine-based intelligence, simple but powerful, looking to him for guidance. He turned his will toward the maelstrom's edge. The great battleship's engines fired, burning with ancient power. It turned its mighty prow, and with Arthur Curry standing defiantly on its command deck, it began to sail out of the storm. Behind him, on the view screen now flickering to life, Arthur saw the Tau supply ship, with Moa still aboard, following in his wake. Protected by the battleship's renewed Gellerfield, he had come into the maelstrom following a song of sorrow. He was leaving with a warship and an ally, and a grim understanding of the price this universe demanded of its heroes. His communicator, scavenged from the Tau ship and linked to the frequencies Batman had been monitoring, crackled to life. It was Cyborg's signal, strong and clear for the first time. "Arthur, are you receiving? We've got coordinates. We're rallying. Superman's in trouble. We need to move, now." Arthur looked at the star chart, now displaying on the ancient console. A blinking marker showed Armageddon Secundus. "I hear you, Victor," Arthur said, his voice echoing in the vast chamber. "And I'm bringing reinforcements." The heart of Atlas powered toward the edge of the maelstrom, a ghost from the past sailing to the rescue of heroes from another reality. The warp raged around it, but could not break through. For now, the Ocean King commanded this sea, too. Hive Tertius smelled of industrial runoff, recycled human waste, and despair. It was a mountain of metal and misery, home to billions who lived, worked, and died without ever seeing the sun. It was also, Batman had determined over the past 8 standard days, one of the most corrupt, inefficient, and fragile systems he had ever infiltrated. He moved through the lower Hab districts like a shadow, his cape blending with the perpetual gloom. The armored suit he'd assembled was a patchwork monstrosity by Wayne Tech standards, scavenged plasteel plates, a refractor field generator stripped from an Enforcer's patrol vehicle, sensory gear cobbled together from black market Auspex units. His cowl's lenses cycled through spectra, highlighting heat signatures, energy traces, and the faint, sickly glow of something his new database called chaotic corruption. He had arrived with nothing. No utility belt, no grapple, no Batmobile. Just his mind, his training, and the absolute certainty that his team was out there, scattered and vulnerable. His first priority had been intelligence. His second had been establishing a network. He found his contact in a dripping overflow pipe that served as a tavern for the Underhive's forgotten. Karth was a data thief, a wiry man with optic implants and a nervous twitch, who traded in secrets because hard currency was too traceable. "You're late," Karth hissed, his eyes darting to the shadows. "Arbite's patrols have tripled. They're looking for you. They're calling you the Spectre of Tertius. Not a bad name, honestly." "The data," Batman growled, his voice modulator making it a statement, not a question. Karth slid a data slate across the rusted table. Batman scanned it. It was everything he'd asked for. Encrypted, inquisitorial communiques intercepted from the Hive's astropathic choir, Mechanicus fleet movement orders, and most importantly, confirmed sightings of anomalies. Superman. Detained. Armageddon Secundus. Interrogation ongoing. Subject resistant to all conventional and psychic interrogation methods. Wonder Woman. Last seen on Ophelia 7th. In contact with the Adepta Sororitas. Status: unclear. Potential alliance. The Flash. Evaded Katachan Imperial Guard. Last tracked moving at transsonic speeds toward the galactic east. Green Lantern. Apprehended by Imperial Navy Frigate Squadron Emperor's Judgment. Status: cooperative, providing intelligence. Cyborg. Escaped Metallicus Prime. Stole a Mechanicus scout ship. Current trajectory: converging with Flash's last known location, Aquaman. Signal lost in the maelstrom, presumed dead or corrupted. Batman's jaw tightened. Clark was captured. Diana was negotiating. Barry and Victor were trying to link up. Hal was playing along. Arthur was missing in a warp storm, and he was stuck in a Hive city, building a resistance cell out of smugglers and data thieves. "There's more," Karth whispered, leaning in. "The big players are moving. An inquisitorial conclave has been called. Lord Inquisitor Torquemada Cotiaz himself is taking personal interest. They're not just scared, they're terrified. You and your associates, you don't fit. You're not demons. You're not xenos. You're not rebels. You're an unknown variable in an equation that hasn't changed in 10,000 years. They'll burn entire sectors to ash before they let you run loose." "I know," Batman said. He'd analyzed the Imperium's psychology. It was a system built on absolute control, facing infinite external threats. Novelty was synonymous with danger. The Justice League wasn't just powerful, it was ideologically contagious. They represented concepts this universe had purged: hope, redemption, mercy, without cost. They were a pathogen in the body of the Imperium, and the immune response would be total war. "What's the play, Spectre?" Karth asked. "We've hit 3 cults, busted 2 slave rings. My people are loyal, but they're not soldiers. We can't fight the Arbites, let alone the Inquisition." "We're not fighting them," Batman said, closing the data slate. "We're leaving, and we're taking something with us." He led Karth through a maze of maintenance tunnels to a sub-level even the Underhive avoided. The air grew colder, the walls slick with condensation. The only light came from Batman's cowl lamps, illuminating symbols carved into the rock 8-pointed stars, leering faces, phrases in a language that made Karth's implant static. "Chaos cult," Karth breathed, terrified. "You didn't say." "I said we were targeting cults. I didn't specify which kind." Batman stopped before a sealed bulkhead, its surface etched with blasphemous runes. "This one isn't summoning daemons. They're trying to build something, a beacon." He placed a small device against the door, a jammer he'd built to disrupt the low-grade psychic harmonics that served as the lock. With a shudder, the bulkhead slid open. The chamber beyond was a perversion of a Mechanicus workshop. Instead of holy oils and incense, the air reeked of blood and ozone. Instead of sacred texts, demonic glyphs glowed on monitors. In the center of the room, suspended by cables and crackling with unnatural energy, was a device. It was clearly based on Imperial teleportarium technology, but warped, its components fused with bone and sinew, its power core a captured, tortured psyker wired into the machinery. A handful of cultists, their bodies already showing mutations, extra eyes, vestigial claws turned from their work, hissing in surprise. Batman was already moving. He didn't have the grace of his usual gadgets, but he had the element of surprise and a relentless, brutal efficiency tailored for close-quarters horror. A bat-shaped shuriken, forged from sharpened plasteel, took the lead cultist in the throat. He moved into the next, his armored fist shattering a jaw mutated with insectoid mandibles. He used the environment, ducking behind consoles, kicking over vats of bubbling fluid that erupted in acidic steam. It was over in seconds. The cultists were fanatics, not trained fighters. Batman stood amidst the twitching bodies, his gaze fixed on the blasphemous machine. What is it?" Karth stammered from the doorway. "A dimensional tuner," Batman said, examining the console. His fingers flew over the keys, his mind correlating the chaotic schematics with the principles of boom tube technology he'd studied after Darkseid's first invasion. Crude, insanely dangerous. They were trying to punch a hole into the warp to pull something through. But the core principle, it's a focused reality disruptor. It doesn't just open a door to the warp, it weakens the barrier between any dimensions. Understanding dawned on Karth's face. "You think you can use it to get home, or to send a signal, or to find the others?" Batman's hands paused. The machine was an abomination. It was powered by suffering. Its very existence was a crime against nature. Using it, even repurposing it, felt like a violation of every principle he stood for. But Clark was in a torture chamber. Diana was making deals with warrior nuns. Barry was being hunted. Victor and Hal were in Imperial custody. Arthur was lost. And this universe offered no clean choices, no righteous paths, only varying shades of damnation. What would Clark do? He'd refuse. He'd find another way. What would Diana do? She'd destroy it as a thing of evil. What do? I win. Help me unhook the Psyker, Batman said, his voice devoid of emotion. Carefully. We'll put him out of his misery, then see if we can replace the power source with something less sentient. You're going to use a chaos machine? Karth asked, horrified. I'm going to salvage components from a weapon to build a tool, Batman corrected. The difference matters. As they worked, disconnecting the whimpering, broken Psyker from the machinery, Batman administered a painless neurotoxin from a stolen medkit, a mercy this universe would never have granted. Batman's communicator chirped. It was on a frequency only one other person in this galaxy would know. Bruce. It was Cyborg, the signal crystal clear. We have a problem, bigger than we thought. Report. I linked up with Barry. We're in the Virga system, holed up in an asteroid belt. But we're not the only ones looking for the League. The Xenos are involved. The Eldar, a craft world fleet just appeared. They're not attacking, they're waiting. And they're broadcasting a message, on a loop, on every frequency. It's for us. Batman's blood ran cold. What's the message? A moment of static, then a new voice came over the comms. It was melodious, ancient, and carried the weight of countless lifetimes. It spoke in flawless, archaic Gothic, to the lost children of another sky. Your light is a flame in a universe of pitch. It draws the moths of oblivion. The great enemy has turned its gaze. You stand at a crossroads. One path leads to your salvation and our mutual destruction. The other leads to a war that will drown the stars in blood. We would speak with you. The laughing god demands it. The thread of fate trembles. Choose wisely. The transmission ended. Batman processed it instantly. The Eldar, an ancient, psychically potent race, saw them as a threat or a tool. The great enemy could only mean chaos, and they'd invoked a god, the laughing god, Segorach, a player he had no data on. They've given us coordinates, Cyborg continued. A neutral location. They want a parley. It's a trap, Batman said immediately. Probably, Cyborg agreed. But Barry's sensors are picking up massive Imperial fleet movements converging on Armageddon. They're not just holding Superman, they're building something around him. A cage, maybe, or a bomb. We don't have time for caution, Bruce. We need to rally, and we need firepower the Imperium doesn't expect. The Eldar might be that. Batman looked at the half-dismantled chaos machine, then at the star chart Karth had provided. The Eldar rendezvous point was 2 days away at best speed. Armageddon was 3. He ran probabilities, strategies, outcomes. All of them were bad. Most ended with at least one of them dead or worse. Contact Hal, Batman ordered. See if his Imperial allies can be persuaded to look the other way. Diana needs to bring her sororitas to the table as a human counterpoint. Victor, you and Barry proceed to the rendezvous. Scout it. Do not engage. I will meet you there. What are you going to do? Cyborg asked. Batman's eyes fell on the machine's core, now cleansed of its vile power source. It pulsed with a faint, unstable energy, a key that could fit a very dangerous lock. I'm going to finish building a door, Batman said, and hope we don't like what's on the other side. He severed the connection. Karth stared at him. You're going to trust Xenos? I don't trust anyone, Batman said, turning back to the console, his mind already designing modifications, safety protocols, ethical bypasses. But I use every tool available. The Eldar are a tool. This machine is a tool. The Inquisition is a tool. And we are the lever that's going to move this galaxy, whether it wants to be moved or not. For the first time, Karth looked at the dark figure, not with fear, but with awe. You're really going to fight them all, aren't you? The Imperium, the Chaos Gods, the Xenos, all of it. Batman didn't look up from his work. The cowl's lenses glowed in the dark as lines of code and circuit diagrams reflected in them. "No," he said, his voice a low rumble in the cold chamber. "We're going to save them. From themselves, even if we have to break every single one of their rules to do it." In the heart of the hive, the bat prepared a blasphemy, planned to parley with aliens, and plotted the rescue of a god from his own worshippers. The grim darkness of the far future had never encountered a will like his. It was about to learn what happened when hope was not a naive dream, but a tactical objective. The chamber they called the Emperor's Mercy was neither merciful nor had anything to do with any Emperor Superman recognized. It was a spherical room, 100 meters across, its walls lined with psychoreactive crystals that amplified pain into psychic feedback. In the center, suspended in a stasis field that suppressed his solar absorption, hung Superman. Cables thicker than his arms siphoned tiny amounts of his blood, analyzed his cellular structure, and bombarded him with every form of energy the Mechanicus and the Inquisition could conceive of. Inquisitor Vane watched from an observation gallery, his augmented eye recording terabytes of data per second. For 7 standard days, they had tried to break, measure, or understand the alien being. The results were inconclusive. Subject's cellular structure continues to absorb and convert local stellar radiation, though at only 63% efficiency compared to Armageddon's sun. A robed tech priest droned, mechadendrites gesturing at holographic readouts. His durability exceeds adamantium. His strength is incalculable with our present equipment. He has resisted psychic interrogation from 7 sanctioned psychers of varying grades, including a gamma level who suffered a catastrophic feedback implosion. "And his moral center?" Fane asked, his voice cool. The tech priest hesitated. "Unchanged. He continues to express concern for the safety of his captors. He apologizes for any damage caused during his capture. He asks after the well-being of the Hive citizens displaced during the orbital bombardment threat. He pities us, my Lord Inquisitor." Vane's lips thinned. That was the unsettling core of it. The entity Kal-El was not a daemon. Daemons raged, bargained, or promised power. He was not a xenos. Xenos were alien, their motivations opaque but self-interested. This being was profoundly, disturbingly benevolent. And in the 41st millennium, true benevolence from a position of power was the most suspicious trait of all. "Continue the tests," Vane ordered. "Increase the emotional resonance frequency. I want to see if we can induce rage or fear. All beings have breaking points. Find his. At current levels, we risk cardiac arrest in the testing psychers," the tech priest warned. "A worthy sacrifice for the Emperor's knowledge," Vane said, turning away. Below, Superman heard every word. His super-hearing, though dampened by the field, pierced the chamber's walls. He felt the psychers approach before he saw them a pressure against his mind, like cold fingers probing for purchase. They entered, 8 of them, their heads shaved and inscribed with holy wards, their eyes blindfolded to protect them from the horrors they channeled. They surrounded his suspension platform. "We are sorry," the lead psyker, an old man with tears of blood seeping from under his blindfold, whispered. "The Emperor's will is clear. We must know what you are." Superman looked at them, his face calm despite the pain. "You don't have to do this. You're hurting yourselves more than you're hurting me. Pain is the price of truth," the psyker replied, and they began to chant. The assault was not physical. It was an onslaught of manufactured emotion, waves of terror, despair, and hopelessness drawn from the Hive City's collective unconscious and focused into a psychic lance aimed at his soul. Superman gasped as the feelings hit him. He saw visions of Krypton's destruction, not as memory, but as a prophecy for Earth, his adoptive parents, Lois, his friends, all consumed in fire while he stood helpless. He felt the crushing weight of universes dying, the loneliness of the last son of a dead world, amplified 1,000-fold. He gritted his teeth. "This isn't real. It is a possible truth," the psyker groaned, blood now flowing freely from his nose. All truth is pain. Submit to it. Show us the rage beneath the compassion. Show us the monster you must be. But Superman had faced his darkness before. He had been corrupted by red kryptonite, manipulated by dark gods, turned against his friends. He knew the monster was there, and he had spent a lifetime choosing not to be it. No, he said, the word cutting through the psychic drone. He focused not on repelling the attack, but on absorbing it. He took the manufactured despair and held it, not letting it reflect back at the psychers, but containing it within his own immovable spirit. The chamber's crystals, designed to amplify suffering, began to vibrate, then glow with a soft, golden light. The lead psyker screamed, not in pain, but in revelation. He is containing it. He is not rejecting the horror. He is bearing it for us. The other psychers faltered, their chant breaking. The emotional resonance field flickered and shifted. Instead of terror, a new feeling began to pulse from Superman, a profound, unwavering compassion. It wasn't an attack. It was an embrace. The crystals shattered, not explosively, but dissolving into fine, warm dust that settled like snow. The stasis field generator overloaded with a whine and died. Superman floated gently to the floor, the siphon cables snapping. He stood, free, looking at the horrified psychers and the now blazing warning runes on the observation gallery. "I am not your enemy," he said, his voice filling the chamber. "But I will not be your test subject. My friends are in danger. This galaxy is in pain, and I am done being passive." Inquisitor Vane stared down, his analytical mind racing. The subject had just neutralized a grade 8 psychic assault through what appeared to be sheer moral fortitude. The data was impossible. The implications were heretical. It suggested that faith, real, selfless faith, could be a power source independent of the Emperor. It was a truth that could shatter the Imperium. "All guards to the mercy chamber," Vane barked into his vox. "Heavy weapons authorized. Lethal force. That thing cannot leave this facility." The blast doors hissed open. 2 full squads of inquisitorial stormtroopers in carapace armor flooded in, hellguns raised. Behind them, the hulking forms of 2 Crusader pattern battle servitors clanked forward, their power fists crackling. Superman looked at them, and for the first time, his eyes began to glow with a heat that had nothing to do with solar radiation. It was anger, finally, but a cold, controlled anger. "You would kill the men who just tried to torture me," he said, nodding to the collapsed psychers, "because they failed. That is the logic of this place, isn't it? Failure is death. Difference is heresy." "Silence, Xenos," a stormtrooper sergeant shouted. "On your knees." "I kneel for no one," Superman said. And he moved. He didn't fly. He walked, straight toward the line of troopers. Hellgun beams, capable of vaporizing ceramite, lanced out. They struck his chest and face and dissipated. He didn't flinch. He kept walking. The battle servitors charged. One swung a power fist the size of a ground car. Superman caught it. The disruptive energy field shattered against his palm. He crushed the fist, metal screeching, then shoved the 8-ton machine backwards into the second one, sending both crashing through the reinforced wall in a tangle of broken machinery. The stormtroopers fell back, firing desperately. Superman's heat vision lashed out, precise and surgical. He didn't aim at them. He aimed at their weapons, at the power packs on their backs. Each beam lasted a microsecond, melting critical components, rendering the guns and armor inert without harming the flesh beneath. In 10 seconds, 24 of the Imperium's elite troops stood disarmed and bewildered. Superman reached the observation gallery. He didn't break the glass. He melted the lock with a glance and pulled the door open. Inquisitor Vane stood alone, his pistol drawn. It trembled slightly in his hand. "You are making a catastrophic error," Vane said, his voice tight. "You have shown power. Now you must show wisdom. Surrender." The alternative is a crusade the likes of which you cannot imagine. Every world you step on will be burned behind you. Every human you try to save will be executed for contamination. You cannot win. Superman looked at him, and the Inquisitor saw something in those blue eyes that froze his blood. It wasn't hatred, it was disappointment. The look a parent gives a child who has chosen cruelty. "I'm not trying to win a war," Superman said quietly. "I'm trying to save lives, your life included. You're so afraid of the dark that you've forgotten what light looks like. You think my compassion is a trick. That's the real tragedy." He reached out, faster than Vane could react, and plucked the pistol from his hand. He crushed it into a metal ball and let it drop. "I'm leaving now. I'm going to find my friends, and then we're going to find a way to fix this. All of this. If you try to stop me, I will stop you. But I won't kill you. That's the difference between us." He turned and walked toward the gaping hole in the chamber wall. Outside, the Hive City sprawled, a monument to suffering. Above, through kilometers of artificial structure, was the sky. "You'll never understand," Vane shouted after him, his composure finally breaking. "This universe doesn't allow for your kind of hero. It will break you. It will corrupt you. Or it will kill you." Superman paused at the edge, the wind from the Hive's lower levels whipping his cape. He didn't look back. "Then it will try," he said, and he leaped, not flying yet, but falling, gathering speed, plunging down through the endless urban canyon. Above, alarms reached a fever pitch. Defense lasers on the Hive spires swiveled, tracking his descent. Interceptor aircraft screamed from launch bays. Superman fell for 10 kilometers, then pulled up, his body snapping horizontal, flying now, a blue and red streak against the grimy sky. The defense lasers fired. He dodged, weaved, his flight path unpredictable. One beam grazed his shoulder. It burned. A real injury. Shallow, but proof they could hurt him. He poured on speed, breaking the sound barrier, a thunderclap echoing through the Hive. He burst from the Hive's upper atmosphere into the black void of space. Behind him, Armageddon Secundus glowed, a polluted jewel. Before him, the stars, and between him and the stars, a fleet. Not just the local defense monitors. A full battle group of the Imperial Navy. A cruiser, 3 frigates, a swarm of destroyers. They had been waiting. Their augurs had tracked his energy signature from the moment he broke containment. They formed a line, weapons charged, void shields shimmering. A vox hail crackled in the silence of the void, broadcast on all frequencies. "Unknown entity, Kal-El. This is Captain Marcus of the Imperial Navy vessel Righteous Fury. You are hereby ordered to cease acceleration and submit to boarding and containment. This is your only warning." Superman stopped, floating in the vacuum. He could hear the hum of their reactors, the beating hearts of thousands of crewmen, the targeting systems locking onto him. He could fight. He could probably disable the fleet, given time, but people would die. Crewmen, conscripts, servitors who were once human, people just following orders in a universe that gave them no choice. He couldn't do it. He was about to speak, to try one more time, when a new signal overrode the Imperial channel. It was a familiar, gruff voice, transmitted on an encrypted frequency only the League would know. "Superman. This is Batman. Don't engage the fleet. Don't say anything. In exactly 3 seconds, a spatial anomaly will form at your coordinates. Enter it immediately. Do not hesitate. Bruce?" "What?" 3, 2, 1. Space in front of Superman rippled. Not the violent tear of a warp rift, but a smooth, circular iridescence, like a soap bubble the size of a cathedral. Through it, he could see not the immaterium, but the interior of a cavernous, alien ship, sweeping organic arches, wraithbone structures, and the silhouettes of slender, tall figures. An Eldar webway gate. The Imperial fleet, seeing the xenos technology, erupted into panic and fury. Warpcraft, xenos sorcery, all batteries, fire, lances and macro cannons discharged, but the gate shimmered. absorbing or deflecting the energy. It was a temporary aperture, unstable. "Clark, now," Batman's voice commanded. Superman made his choice. He flew forward, into the shimmering portal. As he crossed the threshold, he looked back one last time at the Imperial fleet, at the world that had tortured him, at the galaxy of endless war. Then the gateway snapped shut behind him, leaving the Navy firing at empty space. Inside the webway, the air was cool and smelled of distant spices. He stood in the hold of an Eldar vessel. Before him stood Batman, in his scavenged armor, flanked by Cyborg and the Flash, and facing them, with an unreadable expression on her elegant, mask-like face, was an Eldar in ornate robes, a Farseer. "You took a risk, Bruce," Superman said, stepping forward. "Calculated," Batman replied. "The Eldar want to talk, and we needed an exit strategy the Imperium wouldn't predict." He glanced at the Farseer. "This is Farseer Taldir of Craftworld Ulthway. She has a proposition." The Farseer inclined her head, her eyes, ancient and wise, studying Superman with intense curiosity. "Welcome, Kryptonian. We have little time. The threads of fate are unraveling around your presence. The great enemy moves, and your greatest trial in this galaxy is not the Imperium's ignorance." She gestured, and the Wraithbone wall behind her became a view screen, showing a star chart. It focused on a region of space roiling with chaos, a sector where the warp and real space were one. And there, a new signal pulsed, a familiar, terrible energy signature that made Superman's blood run cold. "We have detected a presence, newly ascended to power in the Immaterium," Taldir said, her voice grave. "It calls itself the God of Tyranny. It is building an empire in the Eye of Terror. Its conquests are swift, absolute, and devoid of the random cruelty of the other ruinous powers. It seeks order through absolute control. Its followers speak of a great equation that will solve the problem of free will." Cyborg's mechanical eye focused. Mother Box is analyzing the energy signature. "It's a 94% match to Darkseid's Omega energy," Superman finished, his fists clenching. The truth crashed down on him. They weren't just stranded. Their enemy had followed them. And in the raw, chaotic stuff of the warp, where belief shaped reality, Darkseid hadn't just survived the boom tube's collapse. He was thriving. He was becoming a god. The Wraithbone chamber aboard the Eldar vessel hummed with a psychic resonance that set human teeth on edge. Farseer Taldir stood before a holographic rendering of the galaxy, her long fingers tracing lines of fate that only her race could perceive. The Justice League stood assembled before her: Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, the Flash, Green Lantern, and Cyborg. The image of Aquaman, broadcast from the bridge of the ancient Imperial battleship Heart of Atlas, flickered beside them. "The being you call Darkseid has always craved the anti-life equation," Taldir said, her voice a melodic chime that carried the weight of millennia. "The absolute proof that free will is a weakness, that existence is suffering, that only submission to a single, absolute will brings order. In your universe, it was a mathematical concept. Here, in the Sea of Souls, concepts have power. Belief shapes reality, and the belief he has imposed upon his followers, and the terror he has sown, is coalescing into a new truth." The hologram zoomed into the Eye of Terror. A sector was highlighted, pulsing with the familiar, sickly orange glow of apocalypse. He has carved a domain for himself. He calls it Neo-Apocalypse. He is not a chaos god in the traditional sense. He is not born of a pure emotional excess. He is a parasite, using the existing structures of the warp to amplify his own philosophy. He is turning the anarchy of the Immaterium into a tyranny. "How is that even possible?" Hal Jordan asked, his ring pulsing softly as it analyzed the data. "The warp is chaos, literally. It's emotion, madness, excess. Darkseid is the opposite: cold, logical control." "Chaos is not mere anarchy," Taldir corrected. "It has its own hierarchies, its own cruel logic. Darkseid offers a different logic, a terrible, absolute order that appeals to those exhausted by the endless, senseless violence of the other powers. He offers a grim peace, a silent, obedient end to struggle. For many in this galaxy, that is a seductive promise. Wonder Woman stepped forward, her gaze fierce. We have fought Darkseid before. He is relentless, but he can be beaten. We unite, we fight, we drive him back. You do not understand the scale, Taldir said, a flicker of pity in her eyes. In your universe, he was a conqueror. Here, he is becoming a fundamental force. To defeat him now, you would not be assaulting a fortress. You would be attacking an idea that is taking root in the foundation of this reality, and you would not be alone in that battlefield. The hologram shifted, showing the frenzied movements of the other Chaos God's legions around Darkseid's nascent domain. Khorne hates his cold discipline. Tzeentch despises his static order. Nurgle resents his rejection of despair. Slaanesh finds his absolute control to be the ultimate boredom. The ruinous powers are mustering their infinite legions not to welcome a new brother, but to crush a rival ideology before it solidifies. A great game is beginning, and your Darkseid is the newest, most dangerous piece. Batman's voice cut through the speculation, cold and analytical. You're telling us the forces of chaos are going to wage war on Darkseid. That sounds like our problem solving itself. No, Superman said, his face grim. No, it doesn't. If the Chaos Gods throw everything at Darkseid, the war will spill into real space. Millions of worlds will be caught in the crossfire. Billions will die. It's not a solution. It's a catastrophe. Precisely. Taldir nodded. The resulting confluence of psychic energy would tear the galaxy asunder. My Craftworld's runezingers have foreseen it, a cascade of apocalyptic events they call the Silencing. All sentient life, snuffed out in a final, pointless war between opposing horrors. Your arrival did not cause this, but it was the catalyst. Your nemesis followed your trail, and his nature has ignited a chain reaction. Cyborg interfaced with the Eldar data stream, his mother box whirring. She's right. The predictive models are horrifying. Probability of galactic extinction within 5 standard years if current vectors continue. 87%. The room fell silent. The sheer scale of the doom was paralyzing. What do you propose? Aquaman's voice came through the vox, steady and kingly. There is a weapon, Taldir said. The hologram changed again, showing a massive, complex device of Eldar design. It was beautiful and terrifying, a symphony of wraithbone and psychic crystal, the Yneid's tear. A relic from the time of the fall, designed to sever a being's connection to the warp entirely, to cut a god, or a nascent god, off from the psychic sea that gives it power. It was never completed, for its use would require a sacrifice we were not prepared to make. What sacrifice? Flash asked, wary. The weapon must be fired from within the target's domain, and its activation requires a psychic beacon of immense purity and will a soul that shines brightly enough to guide the tear through the Imperium's distortions. That beacon would be consumed in the process. A suicide mission, Hal stated flatly. A sacrifice, Taldir affirmed. One of you would need to carry the weapon into the heart of Neo-Apocalypse, activate it, and in doing so, sever Darkseid from the warp, reducing him to a mere physical entity. The other Chaos Gods, sensing his sudden vulnerability, would descend and tear him apart. The balance, however horrific, would be restored. The immediate extinction would be averted. And the person who does this? Diana pressed. Their soul would be unraveled. Not destroyed, but scattered, dissipated into the warp. A fate most consider worse than death. The League exchanged glances. They had faced death before, but this was different. This was an eternity of non-existence. No, Superman said, his voice firm. We don't sacrifice our own. That's their way. He gestured vaguely, encompassing the grim galaxy around them. We find another way. We always do. There is no other way foreseen, Taldir insisted, a note of desperation creeping into her voice. The threads are clear. Then we'll make a new thread, the Flash said, a spark of his usual optimism breaking through. We're good at that. Batman had been silent, his eyes fixed on the weapon schematics. The Yanid's tear. It severs the connection between a consciousness and the warp. It doesn't kill, it isolates. He looked up at Taldir. You said it was never completed. Why? The Farseer hesitated. The design is sound. The materials exist. But the final component, the focusing lens, requires a crystal that can resonate at the frequency of a soul without being tainted by the warp. Such a thing does not exist in our galaxy. A slow smile touched Batman's lips. It was a rare, unsettling sight. It does now. He turned to the group. On Krypton, they developed a crystal that could store a living consciousness, a memory crystal. Clark's father used one to create his AI guide. The crystal is psychically inert. It cannot be corrupted. It's a perfect insulator. Superman's eyes widened. The Fortress of Solitude. My father's crystal is there. But that's in another universe. The boom tube technology that brought us here was based on mother boxes and focused through Kryptonian crystal harmonics, Cyborg said, catching on. My mother box has been analyzing the dimensional bleed since we arrived. If I had a source crystal, a pure, uncorrupted Kryptonian memory crystal, I could theoretically tune it to the frequency of this universe and maybe open a doorway. Not big, not stable, but big enough to retrieve one small object. Hope, fragile and desperate, flickered in the chamber. It is a slim chance, Taldir whispered, her eyes distant as she consulted the future. The path is shrouded in mist and blood, but a new thread appears. Faint, but there. Then that's our plan, Wonder Woman declared, slamming a fist into her palm. We get the crystal. We finish the weapon. We take the fight to Darkseid, not with a sacrifice, but with a strategy. We cut him off, and then we face him, together, as we have before. The Imperium will not allow this, Aquaman warned from his ship. They see us as heretics or daemons. They will attack us the moment we move. Then we give them a bigger problem, Hal said, his ring glowing with determination. We don't ask for permission. We tell them the truth. We tell them a new god is rising in the warp, one that makes the others look tame, one that wants to impose order on everything, including their precious Imperium. We offer them a choice: get out of our way, or get wiped out with the rest. It was audacious. It was borderline insane. It was pure Justice League. We need to move fast, Batman said, taking command. Cyborg, you and Flash will work with the Eldar to modify the tier to accept the Kryptonian crystal. Superman, you and I will handle the retrieval. Diana, Hal, Arthur, you need to secure our flank. The Imperium is going to be looking for us. The Inquisition, the Navy, maybe even the Adeptus Custodes, if they've caught wind of this. You need to stall them, confuse them, buy us time. How? Hal asked. Diana smiled, a fierce Amazonian smile. We give them a spectacle. We show them exactly what they're dealing with. We show them that we are not their enemy, but we will not be their prisoners either. She looked at Aquaman's flickering image. Arthur, how would you feel about a naval parade? A slow grin spread across the Aquaman's face. The heart of Atlas could use a shakedown cruise, and I know a few Imperial captains who could use a lesson in humility. I'll coordinate with my contact in the Navy, Hal said, thinking of Commissar Kerrigan. See if we can create some bureaucratic gridlock. The plan was set. A desperate, multifaceted gambit across a hostile galaxy. As the group broke to prepare, Superman approached Batman. Bruce, this retrieval, you said you and I. The fortress is in the Arctic. On another Earth. How do we get there? Batman held up a small, wicked-looking device, the core of the repurposed Chaos Beacon from Hive Tertius. I've spent the last 48 hours recalibrating this. It's not a boom tube, it's a scalpel. It'll open a micro-rift, just for a moment, just big enough for a signal or a very focused, very fast retrieval drone. But the window will be measured in nanoseconds. and the rift will be unstable. It'll draw attention. From everything. What kind of attention? The Chaos Gods will sense a hole poking into a fresh, untainted reality. The Imperium Psychers will feel a massive warp spike. And Darkseid, if he's as connected as they say, he'll feel it too. He'll know we're planning something. Superman nodded, his face set. Then we'll have to be faster. Let's go get my father's legacy. As they moved to the Eldar ship's engineering bay, Farsia Taldir watched them go, her mind touching the fragile new thread of fate they were weaving. It was brighter than she had foreseen, but thin as a spider's silk. And in the Immaterium, the newly ascended god of tyranny turned his boundless attention toward the faint, familiar scent of Krypton. The game was entering its final moves, and the stakes were all of existence. The Craftworld's infinity circuit throbbed like a pained heart as Cyborg and the Eldar Wraithseers worked in frenzied, silent harmony. The Ynied's tier lay disassembled on a platform of living wraithbone, its components glowing with captured starlight and ghostly anguish. Victor Stone's fingers were a blur, his motherbox interface tendrils weaving into the alien technology, translating its psychic engineering into terms his own systems could manipulate. The crystal receptacle is incompatible. An Eldar technician sang in binary grief. The frequencies are alien. It rejects the Matrix. It's not rejecting it, it's not seeing it, Cyborg countered, his human eye narrowed in focus. Kryptonian crystals operate on quantum coherence, not psychic resonance. We need a translator. A buffer. An idea struck him. The Geller field generator from Arthur's battleship. It generates a field of pure, ordered faith, a bubble of reality in the unreality. It could insulate the crystal, let its frequency be projected without being corrupted. A swift series of clicks and hums passed between the Eldar. The concept was approved. Across the webway, on the bridge of the heart of Atlas, Aquaman received the request and gave a single, royal nod. Deep in the ship's engineering decks, a team of awestruck and terrified tech priests, now under the command of the Oceanic King, began the delicate work of decoupling the sacred device. Meanwhile, in a shielded chamber at the Craftworld's edge, Batman and Superman stood before the modified Chaos Beacon. It was a grotesque thing, a fusion of Imperial heresy and Kryptonian science, pulsing with a dangerous, unstable light. Wires snaked from it to a focused emission array, pointed at a single point in empty air. The rift will exist for 1.4 nanoseconds, Batman said, his voice a low monotone. My drone is programmed to transmit a quantum lock signal to the fortress's central crystal, triggering a matter transmission of the memory crystal. The window is so small that even light would only travel 42 centimeters. The drone must be already moving through the point when the rift opens. And the backlash? Superman asked, his X-ray vision examining the device's straining components. Psychic shockwave. Equivalent to a beta-level psyker's death scream. It'll be felt across the sector. Every astropath, every daemon, every chaos, god, and their newborn brother will know exactly where we are and what we're trying to do. Then we'd better be ready to move the second we have it. Batman gave a grim nod. On my mark. 3, 2, 1. Mark. He activated the device. Reality didn't so much tear as stutter. In the chamber, for a span of time too short for any conscious being to perceive, there was a hole, not into the warp, but into a clean, cold place, filled with the light of a yellow sun and the echoes of a dead world. A sleek drone shot through the opening, and then the backlash hit. It was a silent scream that bypassed the ears and vibrated the soul. Across the craft world, Wraithbone groaned. Farsia Taldir, mediating in the Seer Council chambers, cried out as a vision of impossible tyranny and golden light seared her mind. Across the galaxy, on Terra itself, the Emperor's tarot flared and burned in the hands of 100 astrologers. In the eye of Terra, on the obsidian plains of Neo-Apocalypse, Darkseid turned his gaze. A rumble of displeasure, like continents grinding together, echoed through his domain. The Kryptonian, he seeks a key, parademons, find it, destroy it, and in the depths of the Imperial Palace, a being who had not truly stirred in 10 millennia felt a familiar, hated frequency, a vibration of hope from a universe untouched by his light. A single, galvanic thought pulsed through the decaying might of the Golden Throne. Anathema. Back in the chamber, the drone reappeared, hovering. In its grasp was a shard of crystal, glowing with a soft, blue internal light. Superman reached out, and as his fingers touched it, he heard his father's voice, faint but clear. "My son, you are far from home." "We have it," Batman said, already dismantling the now melting beacon. "Now we run." The galaxy erupted. As Cyborg and the Eldar worked furiously to integrate the Kryptonian crystal into the Ynids tier, the forces arrayed against them began to move. From the Eye, a tide of black, insectoid ships poured forth Darkseid's parademon carriers, their hulls scarred by both the fires of apocalypse and the mutating touch of the warp. They were not infinite, not yet, but they were legion. In response, the frothing legions of Khorne mustered on the warp-tainted world of Scalathrax, their bloodlust now directed at this new, orderly enemy. The fleets of Tzientch spun labyrinthine plans, their vessels appearing and disappearing in flashes of impossible color, seeking to steal the weapon for their own inscrutable ends, and the Imperium finally made its move. A combined fleet of the Battlefleet Armageddon, the inquisitorial black ships, and most ominously a single golden-hulled vessel from Terra, the Bucephalus, exited the warp. At its heart was a being of such radiant, terrifying power that his presence dimmed the stars around him, a custodian, not just any, but Captain General Valoris, the personal champion of the Emperor's will. The message broadcast was uncompromising. By the authority of the Captain General of the Adeptus Custodes, acting with the voice of the God Emperor of mankind, the xenos craft world Ulthwé, and all anomalous entities within, are hereby sentenced to exterminatus for crimes of dimensional heresy, consorting with warp entities, and high treason against the Imperium of Man. Surrender the anomalies and the archaeotech for purification, or be purged from existence. Aboard the Heart of Atlas, now joined by a ragtag flotilla of Tau vessels commanded by a reluctantly admiring Shasvra Moa and a squadron of Imperial Navy ships flying under the dubious authority of Commissar Kerrigan, the Justice League's allies faced the incoming storm. "We have perhaps an hour before the Imperial fleet is in bombardment range," Aquaman reported, his image steady on the Eldar viewscreen. "My ship is powerful, but it is one. The Tau are skirmishers. Kerrigan's frigates will be blasted from the void the moment they open fire on their own." "We don't need to win," Wonder Woman said, donning her helm. "We need to hold the line. For 1 hour. The weapon is at 91% integration," Cyborg announced, sparks flying from his interface nodes. "The Eldar are faster than any computer I've ever seen. But the final synchronization requires a live psychic link to the target. To aim the tear, we need someone who can see Darkseid's psychic signature clearly, someone whose soul is a bright, unshakable beacon." All eyes turned to Superman. He was holding the completed weapon now, a staff of wraithbone and Kryptonian crystal, topped with a pulsating gem that held the focused potential of the Ynids tier. "It has to be me," he said. "I'm the one he wants. I'm the one he's always wanted. I'll draw his gaze. I'll carry the weapon in." "No," Batman said. "You're the only one strong enough to get to him. But to aim it, the psychic link requires a different kind of strength. It requires a will that can stare into the heart of tyranny and not blink. A will that can navigate the warp without being corrupted." He looked at Hal Jordan. "It requires the strongest willpower I've ever known." Hal met his gaze, then looked at the weapon. He understood. The ring was down to 18% charge. He'd been conserving it, knowing this moment would come. To be the beacon, he'd have to channel everything he had left, directly into the warp, painting a target on his soul for Darkseid and every demon in creation. He smiled, a cocky, fearless Green Lantern smile. "Guess it's my turn to save the universe." "About time." "Hal," Superman began. "Don't," Hal said, stepping forward and taking the weapon. His ring flared, creating a connection to the crystal. "This is what we do. We make the hard choice so others don't have to. Get me to his doorstep, Soups. I'll do the rest." There was no time for debate. The first lance strikes from the Imperial fleet began to flash against the Craftworld's holofields. The vanguard of the Parademon fleet crashed into the outer picket of Khorne's berserker hulks, lighting up the void with silent, apocalyptic fury. "Go," Farseer Taldir commanded, her voice strained as she held the Craftworld's defenses together through sheer prescience. "A webway tunnel is open, direct to the edge of Neo-Apocalypse. It will not hold long. Go now." Superman grabbed Hal. Wonder Woman and the Flash moved to their flanks. "We'll clear the path," Diana said. "I'll get you through the static," Barry added, lightning crackling around him. Cyborg and Batman remained on the Craftworld bridge, coordinating the desperate defense. "Good luck," Batman said, the closest to sentiment he would allow. Superman nodded. Then, with Hal in tow and his allies beside him, he shot toward the glowing webway portal at the Craftworld's edge. They plunged into the tunnel of light. It was not a smooth ride. The warp raged around the fragile pathway, demonic faces pressing against its shimmering walls, clawing to get in. The Flash ran ahead, his Speed Force energy reinforcing the tunnel where it frayed. Wonder Woman's lasso glowed, its truth repelling the lies of the Neverborn. And ahead, at the tunnel's end, was the impossible geometry of Neo-Apocalypse. A fortress world of black stone and fire orbiting a captive, dying sun. The air reeked of ozone and despair. Before them, on a plains of cracked obsidian, stood Darkseid. He was both familiar and utterly transformed. He was larger, his skin the color of cooled magma, etched with glowing runes that pulsed with the stolen power of the warp. His eyes burned with the same Omega effect, but now they swirled with the captured souls of 1,000 worlds. He was not just a tyrant, he was a doctrine made flesh. "Superman," his voice was the closing of a tomb door across the universe. "You bring me a weapon and a sacrifice." "How?" "Efficient." "It's over, Darkseid," Superman said, landing, his allies fanning out beside him. "This ends now." "Nothing ends. Order merely resets." Darkseid raised a hand. From the ground, 1,000 parademons clawed their way to the surface. From the sky, the contorted shapes of demons allied to the other chaos gods descended, howling with conflicting hungers. "You stand at the confluence of all war. You cannot win. We're not here to win your war," Hal Jordan said, stepping forward, the Yanid's tear held high. His ring blazed with emerald light, pouring his will, his courage, his unshakable defiance into the crystal. It began to pulse in time with his heartbeat. "We're here to cut you off from the buffet." He became a beacon, a shining, emerald star of pure will in the heart of the Immaterium. The effect was instantaneous. Every eye, mortal and demonic, turned to him. The weapon's targeting systems locked onto Darkseid's towering psychic signature. Darkseid sensed the danger. "No." He fired his Omega beams. Superman moved, interposing himself, taking the twin lances of erasure full in the chest. He cried out in pain, real, profound pain, but he held, his body absorbing the unimaginable energy, preventing it from reaching Hal. "Do it, Hal," Wonder Woman shouted, deflecting a swarm of parademons with her shield. The Flash became a whirlwind, disassembling attackers before they could strike. Hal Jordan closed his eyes. He thought of Coast City, of the core, of his friends. He poured every last drop of his will, every ounce of charge in his ring, into the Yanid's tear. In brightest day, in blackest night, the crystal blazed. A beam of pure, focused negation lanced out, not at Darkseid's body, but at his connection to the warp itself. It was a severing, an unraveling. "You cannot. I am order. I am the final." The beam struck, and for a moment, there was silence. The runes on Darkseid's skin went dark. The psychic pressure that emanated from him like a gravity well vanished. The demons around him wavered, confused. He was still massive, still powerful, but he was now just a physical being in the warp. An island of matter in a sea of soul stuff, and the sea turned on him. With a collective shriek of gleeful hatred, the legions of the Chaos Gods fell upon the isolated dark side. The war for Neo-Apocalypse, which would have burned the galaxy, was instead contained in that single, nightmarish arena. Hal's ring went dark. The Wyniad's tear crumbled to dust in his hands. He collapsed, breathing hard, but alive. The weapon had consumed the energy, not the soul. Superman caught him. You did it, but it wasn't over. As Darkseid battled the infinite hordes, a new presence arrived. A single, golden ship translated into real space at the edge of the eye, the Bucephalus, and from it, a teleportation beam descended, landing between the Justice League and the Chaos. Captain General Valoris emerged, his guardian spear crackling with power. His gaze swept over them, lingering on the fading green light on Hal's finger, on the alien weapon's dust, on Superman's scorched chest. The anomalous entities, he boomed, his voice leaving no room for argument. You have ignited a war in the Imperium that may consume this sector. You have trafficked with xenos and wielded forbidden archaeotech. By the will of the Emperor, you will come with me to Terra. Your fate will be decided by the only authority that matters. He leveled his spear. Behind him, a full shield company of custodians teleported in, forming an unbreakable wall of gold. The Justice League, battered, exhausted, but unbowed, gathered together. They had stopped Darkseid. They had prevented a galactic extinction, and now they faced the judgment of the very empire they had, in part, just saved. The Justice League stood at the precipice of a new kind of war. They had triumphed against a cosmic threat, not through overwhelming force, but through unity, sacrifice, and an unwavering commitment to a better way. They had shown the 41st millennium that hope was not a weakness, but a weapon of last resort. In doing so, they had made themselves irreplaceable and intolerable. The Imperium could not comprehend them. To the Inquisition, they were heretical miracles. To the Mechanicus, they were living blasphemies against sacred technology. To the common citizen who would hear whispered tales, they were angels of a forgotten gospel. And to the Captain General of the Custodes, they were the single greatest unknown variable to enter the imperial calculus since the Horus heresy. Their fate would not be decided in a battle. It would be decided in the gilded, bloody courts of Terra. They would be questioned by the highest authorities of 1,000,000 worlds. They would be asked to justify their existence, to explain their principles, to defend their naive heroism before masters of realpolitik and eternal war. But the Justice League had done something irreversible. They had proven that another way was possible. They had shown the Eldar an alliance beyond fate. They had shown renegade imperial officers that conscience could survive. They had, for a brief moment, made the galaxy wonder what it had lost 10,000 years ago. Whether they would be executed, imprisoned, worshipped, or weaponized, one truth was now etched into the grim darkness of the far future. 7 heroes had invaded, not with armies, but with an idea. And ideas, once planted in the fertile soil of desperation, are the hardest things in the universe to kill. The Imperium might break them, but it could never unmake the hope they had ignited. The 41st millennium would never be the same.